Hey everybody, the day is finally here. Episode 1 of the Off the Wall Hockey Show coming your way, and I am joined today by the fantastic Steele from SteelFlyers.com. Steele, how you doing?
Oh man, I tell you what, I am strapped in and I'm ready to go. How you doing, John?
I'm doing pretty well, man. Really excited to get this going. This is going to be a lot of fun today. We are looking at the NHL offseason for all 31 NHL teams. Obviously, a lot to go through. This is going to be a really fun show. You excited?
Oh man, like I said, I'm strapped in. I'm ready to go.
All right,
I can't
awesome.
wait to get into this.
Awesome. We might as well just get right into it then. For the first hour of the show, we're going to talk about the Western Conference, and for the second hour, we're going to talk about the East. And to get right into it with the West, we'll start in the Pacific, looking at the Anaheim Ducks. Anaheim's in an interesting spot right now. Obviously, they're a rebuilding team. They
Yeah.
were a good team for a long time, and then over the past couple seasons, we've seen the core age out, and they've kind of gone into rebuild mode at this point. Their biggest move this offseason was obviously the NHL draft, getting Jamie Drysdale and
Woo,
Jacob Perreault both in the
woo.
first round. Um, those are guys that are going to have a big impact, I think, on this team in the future. Maybe not right away, but a few years down the line. They also brought in Kevin Shattenkirk as kind of a veteran defensive guy to bring in there, kind of help the young guys. Overall, with Anaheim, not being a playoff team last year, kind of in this rebuilding state. What are your thoughts on them and what they're doing right now?
Well, the fact that they brought in Shattenkirk, I think, is going to be a big help for them. Okay. You're right. They drafted extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
Was very pleased with their draft. Okay. They may not be able to see all of those players right away.
Yep.
Okay, but their first round draft pick has a really good shot at making the team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, most first round draft picks usually do. Depends on how he plays, obviously. Depends on how he looks in camp.
Yep.
Okay, but I really think them signing Shattenkirk is really kind of putting them towards the new
Mm-hmm.
direction. You know what I mean? They are currently right now 1.9 million over the cap. So yeah, you could say they're in a bit of a rebuilding. You could say. But I do like what they're doing. I like kind of the moves that they. I really liked how they drafted,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's going to bode well for them. Maybe not like you said this year, but definitely moving forward. And with Shattenkirk in their lineup, that brings experience. That brings a cup-winning player. That brings a guy who can be a leader in the room. You know what I mean? And can take over some of those older vets that have been, aged out.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And he can step in and fill that role.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Shattenkirk's a nice piece there to just kind of help them through this transitioning process. And he's, coming off a Stanley Cup win, obviously, with Tampa Bay. And he's had an interesting career where, it did not go well with the New York Rangers. He ended up getting bought out. And
No.
he kind of had to rejuvenate his career last year with Tampa Bay, but he had a very good season. The salary cap issue with Anaheim right now, it's not as bad as it looks on paper. Cap friendly hasn't factored in LTIR yet. Ryan Kessler's
Right.
contract is coming off the books, so that's almost $7 million right there.
Okay.
So they're a team that is going to be interesting to watch going forward. It's about the young guys now with Anaheim. The
Has to be.
Getzlaff, Perry, core that they've had. That's on its way out. Perry's gone now.
Yep.
Getzlav's getting up there in age.
Yep.
It's it's going to be about Trevor Zegras. It's going to be about Jacob Perreault. It's going to be about Jamie Drysdale on the back end. And
Yep.
whenever these
Yep.
guys are ready to make an NHL impact, that's when you're going to see Anaheim start to move back up the standings rather than going down.
I mean, they were 29 and 33 and 9 last
Mm-hmm.
year. Okay. So look, that's not I mean, that's a smidge below 5.
Mm-hmm.
That's like 0.47 something whatever. So, it's not like they need to do that much. You know what I mean? If they win say 10 more games,
Mm-hmm.
that moves them into the standings now where they might be able to qualify for playoffs. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? So, but yeah, I do understand what you're saying. It might not be this year. It might be next year.
Yeah, I don't think they're a playoff team this year. There's better teams in that division, and although it's
Yeah.
going to be with the divisional realignment probably happening this year, that could shake things up a little bit. That could really shake some things up. But when Vegas is going to finish ahead of Anaheim, I think.
Yeah. I think Vancouver is gonna too.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. So
Edmonton definitely, Calgary probably too. So
yeah,
yeah, there's
it's
definitely other teams in that division. You know what I mean? And speaking of other teams in that division, we ready to move on to Arizona?
absolutely. Oh, I love talking about Arizona, especially this year because I have no idea what this team is doing.
They kind of were a dumpster fire this past year, kind of, or are
Well,
they getting to that point now? Or
they were supposed to be good, and they went out and
yeah,
they got Taylor Hall. They made this huge move for Taylor Hall. The Arizona Coyotes were not going to make the playoffs if it wasn't expanded to 24 teams. They were not a
right.
playoff team last year. And you look at what they did this offseason, all they've made, they lost Hall. Hall's gone now. They didn't
Yep.
bring in anyone to replace him as far as offense is concerned, and the only moves they made have been depth guys for the third and fourth line, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's because they're also in cap purgatory.
yeah,
I
and
mean, they're almost 4 million over.
yeah,
You
I
know,
just I don't know what this team's doing.
look, the whole shakeup with the GM and the coach,
Mm-hmm.
that whole issue right there, I think. Look, I'm not expecting really much of anything out of Arizona next year, to be honest with you. It's a real shame too because I really thought that Arizona was starting to turn the corner.
Mm-hmm.
They got a good coach down there, and Rick Tocchet. You know what I'm saying? And he with bringing in Tocchet, I think they had a good coach down there. You know what I mean? And I really thought that Arizona was turning the corner.
I did too, honestly.
But what happened?
Yeah. No, I just they're a team that has no offense. They rely heavily on their older defense core, which now is full. Guys like Jalmerson and Demers and Oliver Ekman-Larsson's still a good player, but
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
Alex Goligoski, these are guys getting up there in age
Getting up there.
now.
Yep.
They have virtually no offense to speak of. They brought in Phil Kessel. He did absolutely nothing last year.
And
Um,
now he's gone,
and
right? Isn't he gone?
no, Kessel's still
No.
there, but
Oh, he's still there. Okay. All right.
Kessel's going to be their main goal scorer. Him and Clayton Keller are supposed to be their best
Okay.
goal scorers, and I just they didn't replace Hall in that offense that they lost. They rely heavily on their defense and goaltending. Darcy Kemper is good enough to keep the Arizona Coyotes out of the basement, but
Yeah.
they're not. I don't see them
That,
making the playoffs
that's a
this year.
lot to put on his shoulders.
Oh, absolutely,
Okay, look, he's a good goalie.
very good.
Very good goalie. So, but Kessel he's long in the tooth now. He's
Hmm.
not nearly the same player that he was even when he played for Pittsburgh.
Oh yeah, not even
You know what I
close.
mean? So, well, you never know. I mean, you put a bunch of youngsters on a team and you just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I just don't see the offense there with Arizona, them being able to score enough goals to be a competitive playoff level team. I just don't think it's gonna happen.
No, no. And I think they might even finish lower than the Ducks, maybe. I don't know.
That's definitely that's possible. It's possible. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, right.
All right, so next up, Calgary Flames. This is an interesting team because they had a big offseason. They went out and made a lot of moves, gave a long-term deal, 6-year contract to Jacob Markstrom.
Oh
They
yeah.
brought in Chris Tanev on the back
Yep.
end,
Yep.
coming in from Vancouver. Both of those guys. I mean, this TJ Brody goes out, Tanev comes in, Markstrom
Right.
comes in to play goal. Cam Talbot goes out, so it will
Yep.
be Riddick and Markstrom as the goaltending duo now.
Much better duo. They brought in Dominic Simon there too for a little bit of a
Hmm.
some depth.
Yeah, they've
You
made a
know what
few
I
depth
mean?
moves as well.
Um,
Joakim
so
Nordstrom.
yeah, 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 yeah. So, I might butcher this name, but I'm gonna try it. Nikita Nesterov.
Nesterov.
Nesterov. All
Yeah.
right. But he's another depth player that they added. So yeah, they really went out and spent their money that they had.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as we know, Johnny is still there in Calgary.
Johnny Gaudreau, still a Calgary Flame. His name has been talked about a lot as far as potential trades and them kind of looking to maybe move him. But as of now, he's still a Flame, and obviously a big piece of that team. Their
Oh,
top line left winger. So,
oh.
um,
Look, Calgary was the surprise kind of playoff team this past year. They qualified for the playoffs. You know what I mean? They
hmm
did really well. I mean, 36, 27, and 7.
yep,
So they were the eighth seed or whatever.
yep,
However they seeded them. You know what I mean? So they did qualify for the playoffs. They did, you know. But I think what's going to really happen here is now that we've got a target date
hmm
set, I think we're going to start seeing some of these players be moved now.
Oh, I agree. I absolutely
Okay.
agree.
Like Johnny Gaudreau's and those kinds, because now we know what's going to happen. And I believe we also can say too that there's not going to be any um, increase in the amount of money that's going to be deferred either.
Yeah, no, the economic issues, they're just sticking with the original new CBA. So that was a win for the players for sure.
For sure.
For sure. Um,
But I think that's going to affect a lot of teams, especially like Calgary, what they're dealing with Johnny Gaudreau.
hmm
You know what I mean? So that's why I wanted to mention that because he is one of those names that's out there
Yes,
that is
he's
going to be potentially on the block.
yeah, he's definitely a guy that there's been a lot of talk about him getting moved possibly, and Calgary's been one of those teams that's been a pretty consistent playoff team, but they never win in the playoffs. They've never gone anywhere in the playoffs. And you think back to a couple years ago, they just got absolutely embarrassed by the Colorado Avalanche. They were the 1 seed. 2 years ago, they were the 1 seed in the Pacific Division. They played the wild card team in the Colorado Avalanche, who were still a young up and coming team, and they got absolutely embarrassed in five
Smoked.
games in the first round. And then this past year, they get by Winnipeg in the
Yeah.
qualifiers, and then they go into the first round and they lose to Dallas. Now, obviously, Dallas went on to go all the way to the Cup Finals, but Calgary
Right.
actually had a lead in that series, and
Yeah.
then Matthew Tkachuk got hurt, and it was all downhill from there.
Yeah. Is he slated to be back?
Yes, Matthew Tkachuk
Okay,
should be fine.
because if he's slated to come back, that's definitely going to affect them moving forward.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And things of that nature. With all the players that they've added to their team, the depth that they've added, and all that other stuff too. Calgary might be a step if they can keep Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
They might be a step better.
Yeah, and it's also largely going to depend on Jacob Markstrom in goal, I think. If Markstrom plays like he did last year with Vancouver, the
Yeah,
Calgary Flames will be a better team this year than they were last season.
yeah,
The
far better than Talbot all day.
Yes, he's better than Cam Talbot, absolutely. The issue, or that I see, is that we don't know what Jacob Markstrom is going to be. He had a phenomenal season last year, but that was like his one great season in the NHL, and before that, he had never really put up numbers like that before. So we don't know if that's going to consistently be who Jacob Markstrom is, or if that was just one good season for Markstrom.
Well, I guess they're banking on that it's gonna continue.
They gave him a 6-year deal, so they're really hoping that
Yeah, yeah.
he continues to play like he did last year.
I mean, they're definitely thinking he's gonna get better, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
So, speaking of getting better or moving on, we're going to get into the Edmonton Oilers.
yes, always a fun
And
team to talk about.
another fun team to talk about. This is a team near and dear to Perlo's heart,
Absolutely.
so he's going to enjoy some of this information too. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
They, unfortunately, though, according to Cap Friendly, are in purgatory
Yeah,
by
as
almost 2 million.
Yeah, I'm looking through the roster now for some LTIR candidates here. Um,
Yeah, I don't think there is any,
no
or
one
there might.
seems to be injured right now, but they do
Right,
have some guys I think that they could eventually. They have a lot of forwards listed right now on the NHL roster for on
right.
cap friendly. That some of those guys, a couple of those guys, are probably going to end up being sent down.
Yeah, yeah. Now they did pick up Dominic
Cahoon,
Cahoon,
yes,
Dominic Cahoon,
Dominic Cahoon comes in.
right? Yep. So, but he seems like he's more of a depth player than anything else. You know
Yeah,
what I mean in that
absolutely.
lineup anyway. He only signed for like 700,000 for that, but it's going to be interesting because with the team that they have there and with what they were able to do this past year,
Mm-hmm.
37, 25, and 9. They were fifth
Mm-hmm.
on the seeding, and they played relatively well in the round robin areas. And then once they got into the first round of the playoffs, it didn't go well for them, did it?
No, though they got knocked out in the qualifiers by Chicago, and
That's what I mean. They
Chicago
didn't even
was
make it.
Chicago was the 12 seed, and that was not supposed to happen. But they had a really good regular season. My problem with the Edmonton Oilers has always been that they're way too reliant on Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. All of their offense has to run through those two guys. And the other major problem is goaltending. Mikko Koskinen and Mike Smith. That's not a duo that's likely to take you far in the playoffs, even when you do make it.
Obviously.
Yeah, no, I was a little surprised this offseason that they didn't address the goaltending. They just brought back Mike Smith for another year.
Yeah.
Koskinen's probably going to be the starter, although with this condensed season, it's likely going to be. You're going to see a lot of goaltending tandems more so than someone play a lot of games and the backup only play a few. You're going to see a lot of split games this
Right.
year.
Right.
Um,
They did bring in some defensive help though, in
Tyson,
in Tyson Berry.
yes.
That was a nice little signing for them. That's going to help them, especially on the back end for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree. I don't think that goaltending tandem that doesn't scare me
No, not at
at
all.
all. If you line up against them guys, it's like, uh, okay, what?
Yeah.
You
I'd
know,
rather have Arizona's goaltending tandem and have the offense of the Edmonton Oilers. I
Ooh,
mean,
that could be scary.
that would be a very good team if you had
Woo!
Kemper there in
Yeah,
or goaltender at that level in
yeah,
Edmonton. But
with Hayes and Drysdale. Oh my gosh!
yeah, and
That would be
so
scary.
the one thing that I did really like that Edmonton did, I like the Barry addition. I think Tyson Barry's better in the Western Conference than in the East. He did
Yeah,
not fit
yeah,
in Toronto.
no,
His skating game and his kind of high flying style fits better out west. And they brought in Kyle Turris on a very cheap 2-year deal. And
yeah,
this is a guy who had an abysmal time with the Nashville Predators. But before that, was a 50 plus, 60 plus point guy and just obviously did not fit in Nashville, did not work out
no,
there. But I think if you can get Kyle Turris back to being even just a 40 plus point guy,
yeah.
that's
Hey,
an absolute steal of a contract and now gives you three legitimate centers with McDavid on your first line, Draisaitl on the second, and now Turris on the third. It allows Nugent Hopkins to play left wing
yep.
with Draisaitl, which is
And
I
that's a
think
better combo.
his
Yeah,
absolutely Nugent Hopkins' better position in the lineup is for him to be on Draisaitl's wing. And all of a sudden, their offense got a lot deeper. They're not going into this year. They're not just going to be relying on everything to be McDavid and Draisaitl
yeah,
anymore.
yeah, yeah,
They've got Turris in there now. Jesse Puljarvi should be coming back over from Finland. Dominic Cahoon's a good third line type depth scoring piece. Kyler Yamamoto, still just 22 years old. He's on the rise. He played a lot on Draisaitl's wing last
yeah,
season, and I think he's going to
yeah,
take that next step. And all of a sudden, you've got a much deeper offense. They brought back Tyler Ennis for another year as well. So you've got a
yeah.
much deeper offense now in Edmonton than you had a year ago. And this is a team. I have major questions about the goaltending, but this is a team that I think is certainly going to be a playoff team um,
And they
this
didn't
year.
even really address it, like you said. You know,
Yeah,
they brought in what, Anton Forsberg as a
third goaltender,
third
but
goaltender,
they did
but
not. Yeah, they,
they didn't really address it. You know what I
no,
mean? And it's not like they're okay. They are a bit in purgatory now, but they might have some. They're gonna have some of those other younger guys are gonna come off the books. You know, and that's what I think too. That's why some of these teams are over right now.
yeah. A lot of teams
Um,
are over right now that won't be by the start of the season.
right, right. These are just projected that they're currently carrying an over right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Um, sorry, Perlo, but we're done talking about Edmonton, buddy.
Yeah. uh,
And we're going to move on to the Los Angeles
Angeles
Kings. And
Kings.
I just want to say one thing. I have to disagree with you about their retro jerseys.
I love the Kings jerseys.
Okay, I just can't stand those colors together. I'm sorry.
I love them.
I
I
know,
love
but that's
that
why I
was
had to say that.
my favorite of all the retro jerseys was the LA Kings with
Okay.
the royal purple is just beautiful.
Look,
I'm all
purple's
about
my
it.
favorite color, and I love the design, but the purple and the yellow just throws me. Okay, for the Kings, it
Hmm.
just throws me. That's all.
Uh,
So,
they've been they've been black and silver for a long time now, but their original colors were purple and yellow back when they came into the league,
when they first came
when
in the
they
league,
first
yeah.
came in.
hmm And I'll tell you what, man, the Kings, woo, they did not qualify for the playoffs. They too seem to be in a rebuilding year,
Oh,
if you could,
very much so.
very much so. They finished last year 29, 33, and 9. And they are currently looking at a rather large pile of money to spend for the upcoming season at what, 13.9 million, I
Yeah,
think
they
they
have a
are.
ton of cap space. I don't think they're going to use it this year. This is a team.
Not
Rob
all of it.
Blake is the GM, and he knows very much what he's doing. This is a team that's in a rebuild right now, but trying to come out of this rebuild in a way that we've seen like Carolina or the New York Rangers and come out really, really strong. And it's all about the young guys now with this Kings team. They Quentin Byfield drafted second overall. They had the second pick in this year's draft. I would assume he's probably going to make the team this year.
Probably.
Uh, he has a chance to be an incredibly good player, and I think he has a chance to learn a ton from Anze Kopitar playing behind him. And Kopitar feels like he's been in the league forever. He's 33. He's not young anymore, but he isn't as old as you might think. He's not in his
Right.
late 30s or anything like that. So Kopitar still has some good years left in him.
I agree.
Um, it's about the young guys here. It's about these prospects coming up and making an impact at the NHL. And I don't think Rob Blake is one to rush it. He knows hockey well enough as a player and now as a front office member that you have to be patient with these things. And when these guys are ready, they're going to be ready. But let me tell you, when some of these prospects and young guys for the Kings finally are ready, look out, because this is going to be a team that's launching themselves back near the top of the Western Conference.
I agree. And with that amount of money to spend, whatever holes they have, they could potentially go fill or trade to fill or whatever the case is, because they have absolutely nothing limiting them at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they did get that second overall pick. So, hey, man, I'm pretty sure he's going to play.
Yeah,
Pretty
I
sure.
would think so.
Yeah, I would think so too. I mean, look, LA, I have a lot of respect for what LA did when Ron Hextall was there and as the assistant GM,
Mm-hmm.
because of what they did, and they were able through their system be able to put two cups
Yep.
up. Okay, and not only were they able to put two cups up, but they were able to stock the cupboards, and they've stayed relatively relevant for the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, aside from last year and the year before, where they've kind of dropped off a little bit because guys are getting older.
Yeah.
Is Carter still on the team?
Jeff Carter, Dustin Brown, these are guys in their pushing their late
Getting
30s
long in
now.
the tooth
Yep.
now, where you need to start replacing them guys, and that doesn't take, it doesn't happen overnight.
No.
You know what I mean? So they've been drafting really well. They've always relatively drafted well. Their
Yes.
cup teams, in fact, their cup teams were some of the first teams that came out that were completely all drafted teams in a really long time. You know what I mean? Where
Mm-hmm.
most of all their core players were all drafted,
Yes.
where they didn't have a lot of guys that they brought in through free agency.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I agree with what you're saying. He definitely knows hockey there. The general manager, he knows how to build things. And I look for Los Angeles to definitely take a step up, spend some money this year and take a step up.
Yeah, I think this is a team that's going to be, making a significant jump forward in the near future. I don't think they're quite ready yet this year. They're still relying a lot on guys in their late teens, early 20s. But 3 years down the line, the LA Kings are going to
Yeah,
be back to
yeah.
being a competitive team for sure. So let's see, who do we have next? Hey, we're going to finish out the California teams here with San Jose.
San Jose. Oh yeah.
The San Jose Sharks. This is an interesting team.
Whew, man.
What's
Okay.
going on?
They finished dead last.
Yes.
They won 29 games last year. They
Yes.
lost 36.
And they're an older team.
And they are an older team. Okay, I get it. They are 2.3 million. They have cap space. Okay. But what's going on with these guys?
Man, it's tough to tell. They weren't supposed to be a last place team, and that's what
No.
they weren't supposed to be a rebuilding team, and now they look like a team that might need a rebuild, and that's kind of thrown everyone off. And um,
Yeah.
just the Erik Karlsson deal is going to come back and just absolutely bite this team. Um, they signed this guy for, as far as cap friendly goes out, for 11.5 million per season, and he hasn't been able to stay healthy since 2017.
Nope. Hasn't played a full season.
No, he
No.
cannot stay healthy, and even when he is healthy, he's not the player he was 4 years ago.
No.
Erik Karlsson is not the player he was 4 years ago, and I don't think he ever will be again. He's injured every single year, and he just eventually that toll on your body just chips away and chips away, and you're not the player that you once were. He's 30 years old now, and this contract I think is going to absolutely kill the San Jose Sharks. And when you
I
look
mean,
at what they did this offseason, I mean, they made a few trades. They brought in Ryan Donato and Devin Dubnyk from the Minnesota Wild. They brought back Matt Nieto on a very cheap contract. They
700 grand.
700,000. He's a depth fourth line guy. They
Yeah,
did
yeah.
re-sign Kevin LeBanc, who's 24-year-old right winger. He was a guy that they needed to get re-signed, and they got him at under $5 million per year. So that's a pretty good contract there. But man, this is a team. I see them getting worse before they get better, and I think it might be time. It might be time to realize like we might need to do a full rebuild here.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think so.
they
I think that's what we're gonna get to. Yeah.
yeah, they did have a lot of injuries last year. Obviously, Carlson, Mark-Edward Vlasic hasn't really been the
Yeah.
player that he has
Yeah.
been. He's making $7 million a year for the next 6 seasons.
Yeah, they have some very ugly contracts
Oh
on
yeah.
their team, and
Well,
so that's why I don't think that's why I even though they're a little bit over or under the cap right now, I just don't see them being able to do enough this year to be able to be relevant.
no,
Yeah.
this is what happens when this is a classic case, I think, of falling in love with your own players too much and giving them big contracts because San Jose's been a playoff team for the past like 15 years. They've missed a couple
Yeah,
times, but for the most part, they've been a playoff team for like the past 15 years. They've always
pretty
been
much.
good.
Always.
And but now you have these guys who are getting older, locked into long-term deals at very high cap hits. Logan Couture is 31 years old. He's making $8 million a year
Hmm.
as far as cap friendly goes out. Evander Kane is 29 years old, making $7 million a year for the next 5 seasons. Um, you go to the back end. Erik Karlsson's 30 years old, making $11.5 million per year as far as cap friendly goes. Brent Burns is 35 years old. still has 5 years left on his contract. He's under contract till he's 40 years old, making $8 million a year. And Mark-Edward Vlasic is 33. He's got 6 years left at $7 million. And Martin Jones in goal, who was horrendous last
Yeah.
season,
Oh
is
man.
30 years old, making $5.75 million for the next 4 years still. It's like, oh my God, they are locked into these horrible long-term contracts for guys now in their
Not
30s.
worth it.
It's not worth it, and this is a team that just doesn't have enough there, I think, to be a playoff team unless Carlson and Burns somehow get back to being what they were 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And if Couture and Kane can somehow stay healthy and put up some big points, maybe they
Be
could
on the ice.
maybe they could compete for a wild card spot, but I just don't think there's enough there. There's no depth there whatsoever because they have so much money tied up in these big guys. When you look at their depth guys, they're all making under $1 million. They're all guys making 800,000, 750.
700,000.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
there's no depth there whatsoever. I don't see good things coming for San Jose. Would they have enough talent to maybe not finish in last? I don't think they're going to finish in last place again.
Agreed.
But Jesus, there's there's
There's not much looking
there's
good
not
there,
much
that's for
looking
sure.
good with San Jose. I think it's going to be rebuild time here pretty soon for the Sharks.
Yeah, look, when when you have all those kinds of contracts like that, it's like you
Mhm.
paid for these guys when they were in their prime, and now that they're not in their prime anymore, now they're being rewarded for what they did when they were in their prime.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's all fine and great, but not for that amount of years.
No, that
And and I'm sorry, but there's a few of those contracts that I don't think are worth that money now.
oh, I 100%
Evander
agree.
Kane being one of them.
Mhm.
Okay, he's not worth that kind of money. Okay, and their goalie is not worth
No.
$5 million a year either. Okay,
Jones shouldn't
no,
even be a starter.
that's what I mean.
Ugh.
So, and they aren't the type of players that are going to be easily moved.
No, not with those contracts. No
That's what I mean.
chance. No
That's what I
chance.
mean. So they're not going to be able to move these players because no other team. I mean, if you look through some of the teams that are like way above the cap, I
Mhm.
mean, Nashville's up there, New Jersey's up there, Detroit's kind of up there, Columbus is up there a little bit, Ottawa's up there, but when you look at that, nobody's going to really be able to eat any of those kind of contracts like that for that amount of time.
No.
And then that means because of the CBA, that means now San Jose is going to have to, I think they have to eat 35% or 40% of the contract money
Ugh.
or whatever they have to pay or however that's going to have to work if they trade a guy out or whatever. So they're still going to be eating some of the salaries on some of these contracts, no matter even if they do get them traded out.
Absolutely. They'd 100% be retaining salary to even move any of those guys. So it's not looking good with the San Jose
A
Sharks.
mess.
Let's move on to a team that I think is looking much better than the San Jose Sharks, and that's the Vancouver Canucks.
That's a
And
180-degree turn there.
that is the complete other way.
Yeah.
Vancouver has become one of my favorite teams in the NHL, and this team is so well put together. They've had an active offseason, to say the least. It's been an active offseason. A lot of their guys have gone out, many of them to the Calgary Flames. Markstrom, Tanev to Calgary. Tyler Toffoli's now with Montreal.
Y'all,
Uh,
yeah.
Um, they did lose some guys out of that lineup, but they were able to bring in Braden Holtby to go along
Yep.
with Thatcher Demko in goal, and I think they're
And I
really.
think that right there, that Braden Holtby is a huge coup for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, I think Demko they're looking at to be the starter now.
Yeah.
With the way that he played in the playoffs in relief of Markstrom this past year, I think they're saying, all right, Demko's ready. He's 25. We've let him develop. Now it's time for him to be the starter. And what better kind of 1B type guy to have than Braden Holtby, who's
Hello.
won a Stanley Cup, 31 years old, did not have a great season last year, but certainly that was just one bad season in a career of many great seasons. I just think Holtby's the perfect kind of veteran guy to help along a young goaltender like Demko.
Yeah.
And while Demko, I think, is going to end up playing more games,
Yeah.
what a duo. What a
Yeah.
duo in goal. Even with losing Markstrom, doesn't even feel like a big deal.
So what? See
Yeah.
ya. Bye. Because look, let's face it, Hopi is coming off of a major career where he's played more than
Mm-hmm.
50% of the games for his teams. Okay. So, and for the last 2 years, he's sort of dropped off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. After he won the cup, I mean, even that cup year was not his best statistical year.
No,
And I think he played like 45 games or
if
something like that.
if people remember, he was not the starting goaltender heading into the playoffs the year that they won the cup. The first two games, Philip Grubauer was the starting goaltender. He lost both of the games. They put Holtby in, and Holtby kind of went on a run there through the postseason. But he had lost the starting job by that point,
Yeah.
and that was 2 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, that was the year they went to the cup.
Yeah, that was 2018. So,
That's what I mean. So, okay. But he's a proven goalie, okay?
hmm
And with less work, he might be able to be that particular type of goalie that can come in and be that perfect backup goalie where he'll be able to win those games for you no matter what,
hmm
because he's just that good.
Oh
He
yeah.
can make those saves. You know what I mean? So I think that was a great addition for them. Vancouver finished seventh in the standings last year, and they did relatively well in the playoffs and in the seeding and all that other stuff, and they
hmm
played really well. Okay, and I too have to say that I'm impressed with what Vancouver has been able to do over the last 2 years.
Oh, absolutely. They're one
Okay,
of the best young up and coming teams.
I look for them to be taking huge leaps
I agree.
this year. Okay, especially with Holtby coming in,
hmm
and especially with some of the depth guys they brought in. Zach McEwen, okay, was a center right winger depth guy that they brought in.
hmm
Okay, he signed a $1.8 million deal. Okay, but it's those kinds of players, and then bringing in Holtby is what I think is going to put them over the hump and
hmm
get them to a much better step on the peg for next year for sure.
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about this yet, but they robbed the Vegas Golden Knights of Nate Schmidt. And Vegas had to make that deal, obviously, to sign Alex Petrangelo. They had to move money out.
Yep.
So all they gave up for Nate Schmidt, who's a guy that normally you would get a lot in return for,
Yeah.
Vegas's hands were tied. They only got a third round pick. So they bring in Nate Schmidt for virtually nothing, and he's a 29-year-old defenseman who was number one D-man for Vegas. Comes in as probably a number 2, 3 guy, obviously behind Quinn Hughes with the
Yeah.
Canucks. But Schmidt is a massive upgrade over Chris Tanev on that
All
back
day.
end. So their defense got better. Their goaltending, you know,
Got better.
you got Holtby in there now. You have this incredibly talented young forward group with guys like Horvat and Besser and Elias Pettersson. And I know I'm missing guys here. Adam Gaudette's a really underrated guy, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
There's so much talent here. That it looks like there's going to be an All Canadian division next season. Looks like that's probably going to happen. Vancouver could win that division. Vancouver might be the best Canadian team right now. I think they're better than Calgary. I think
Yeah.
they could be better than Edmonton. They could be better than Toronto. This team
Yeah.
is going to be in the running to win that Canadian division.
Yeah. I'm going to have to agree with you 100%. I like their goalie tandem. Oh, I think it's their goalie tandem that puts it over the edge for me
Mm-hmm.
because I like their goalie tandem better than Edmonton. I definitely
Oh
like it
yeah.
better than Calgary. I like it better than Montreal, even though they got Price still in Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, not saying not no knock against Montreal's goalies. You know what I mean? But I just think if they're going to be in an all Canadian division, yeah, I'm going to be with you on that. I'll stand with you on that. Vancouver could win that division if it was just all the Canadian teams. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be with you on that.
All right, so we're both pretty high on the Canucks this coming year, which I think a
Yeah.
lot of people are. They're a team that I'm looking to make great strides forward. But that brings us to the final Pacific Division team, the team that won this division last year, the Vegas Golden Knights, and they've had a heck of an offseason, a very interesting offseason to say the least. Going out and getting the what I think is the who was the best player available in free agency in Alex Petrangelo, bring
Yes.
him in free agency from the St. Louis
Yes.
Blues. But to
Yes.
do it, they had to move some money out, which involved getting rid of Nate Schmidt, as we were
Nate
just
Schmidt.
talking about, and Paul Stastny, who is their second line center, who is now with the Winnipeg Jets. So some
Right.
additions, but also some subtractions here with Vegas. And rumors are still swirling around this team as far as trades go, because they're not in a great cap situation right now, even still. So
1.4 million they are over.
over.
Yes. They also were able to um, you said additions too. Lehner
Yeah,
was able to sign a really good team-friendly
only
deal for
$5 million
them.
per year for one of the best goalies in the league.
That's what I mean. And so, yeah, uh, man, I look at for Vegas to definitely do some good things this coming year.
Mm-hmm.
They've been, look, ever since they've come into the league, they have been a win now team.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
what's really been amazing is that they've continued to hold that line the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
They made it to the Stanley Cup Finals their first year. They made it to the playoffs the second year and the playoffs the third year. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to make the playoffs for the fourth year again this year.
Oh, I absolutely see Vegas as a playoff team without a doubt.
With Petrangelo
Yeah.
and Lehner back there full time now instead of
Th-
coming in at the deadline.
yeah, their goaltending duo might be the best in the league with Leonard and Fleury in goal there.
Woo, woo,
That's
okay.
just that goaltending duo in itself, I think, would be enough to at least have a team in playoff contention.
At
And now you
least.
you have Petrangelo leading the way with Shea Theodore, who had a phenomenal postseason last year on the back end. You have a very talented forward group still with guys like Mark Stone and William Karlsson and Max Pacioretty, Jonathan Marchessault. Now Pacioretty and Marchessault, one of those guys could potentially be moved for salary cap reasons. That's kind of really been talked about over the past couple days, is that if someone's going to go, it's going to be one of those
One
two.
of
But
those two.
um, even if they have to move another forward, there's still Alex Tuck really I think took a step forward last
I
year
agree.
to being a
Yeah.
top six guy. So there's talent there in Vegas. I think they're going to be a playoff team. Without a doubt, and they continue to be one of the top teams in the Western Conference really since they've come into the league.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree, 110%. And wow, what do you know? That rounds out the Pacific Division.
Yeah,
How about that?
awesome.
Wow.
So
All
we're
right, we
gonna
got through that.
move on to the Central here and start with Chicago. Uh,
Oh boy, this team, I have to say, is okay. Due to quote unquote family reasons, I have to root for this team. I was blown away by the fact that they were able to come in and do what they were able to do in the playoffs and get to where they were able to get to.
yeah, I mean, I was shocked that they beat Edmonton in that qualifying series.
Because everybody picked
Oh
Edmonton.
yeah,
Like
absolutely.
nobody gave Chicago a shot
Yeah,
at all.
it was wild for that to happen. But they came in and beat Edmonton, and Edmonton did not play well, especially defensively. And obviously they ended up losing to Vegas in the first round of the normal playoffs. But
Yeah.
still, that was a better season than what I was expecting from the Blackhawks. But it's funny they win they win the qualifying round, they make the playoffs, and now they come out this offseason and they go, actually, we're a rebuilding team. And Stan Bowman openly admits that they're going into rebuild mode here. Which
Okay.
I can't necessarily blame him for because I think they do somewhat need it, but it's odd
To
after
come out and admit it.
it's odd to come out and admit it, and it's odd to do it in a season where you just were a surprise playoff team that won a series. Like for you to try and like almost willingly take a step backwards now is a very kind of weird thing to do in my opinion.
It's a
Um,
really odd message, especially because he put it out there for the public.
mhm.
You know what I
Very
mean?
very interesting.
I don't know about if I would like particularly that. That's,
Well,
you know,
the star players were not happy. Taves, Keith, Kane, those guys were not happy because they're like, "What are we doing here? We only have a few years left, in our careers, and now we're going to be going backwards. Like, what sense does that make for us?" Seabrook's been injured a lot, but Duncan Keith's 37 years old. Kane
Very
and
long in the
Taves are
tooth.
32 years old now,
Yep.
so
Yep.
they're getting to the point here where it's like we gotta win. Like they've already won three Stanley
Now.
Cups. They've already won
Yeah.
3 cups, but obviously they want to win more. And the moves that they made this offseason, the big one
Depth
being
players at most.
the Brandon Saad trade was the one that really
Yeah.
had me just like, what? What
Yeah.
like what are you doing? They trade Brandon Saad to the Colorado Avalanche in exchange
Yeah.
for Nikita Zadorov, who I like
Which they
Nikita
did sign.
Zadorov.
I mean, they did sign.
I like Nikita Zadorov, but he's a bottom pair defenseman.
Yeah. For
He's a 5'6" defenseman, and you just gave up a top 6 scoring winger for a bottom pair defenseman. Like that made virtually no sense to me.
huh?
They traded Oli Mata to LA, which I think does make sense because Oli Mata did not work out well in Chicago. And then they had the goaltending issue. Corey Crawford left in free agency. They did not re-sign Corey Crawford, and they didn't bring anyone in. So now they
And
have
they're
a goaltending duo of Colin Delia and Malcolm Subban, neither of whom are starter material in the NHL. Honestly, both of them are kind of fringe NHL goalies to begin with. They have no goaltending heading into this season.
and they only have $5 million to spend.
Yeah,
Okay. And really, for the most part, who's really out there for them?
there's no starting goaltenders left. So it looks like they're gonna play this year with Delia and Subban as the goaltending duo, and that in itself, I think, kills this coming season for Chicago.
Agreed. Agreed. Because how can you go to your star players and tell them, well, okay, yeah, we're kind of rebuilding, but we're still going to try to win now. Well, no, you're not,
No, they're not
because you
winning
didn't
now.
address your goaltending, so you're not showing me that you're trying to win now. So,
Yeah.
just my opinion.
Yeah,
Just my
no,
opinion.
I think Chicago's
Step back.
probably gonna finish last in the Central or whatever division they're in. Maybe it depends on how the divisions shake out, whatever the alignment is. But Chicago's not gonna make the playoffs this year. This is a team that uh, they're kind of caught
Getting
in this.
older.
They're getting older and they're caught in this kind of limbo right now, and I just don't see enough there for them to be a playoff team.
No, and even with the amount of money that they have in cap space, there's nobody left out there to get, and they won't be able to really trade for anybody either because nobody's trying to give up goalies now.
Yeah, absolutely not.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have to root for them. But, well,
Yeah,
we'll
it's
move on.
yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
it's a work in progress in Chicago, and we're gonna move on to a team that it is not a work in progress for, the Colorado Avalanche, who I think
Oh, it's definitely
probably
working,
yeah, it's
and it's
working.
definitely progressing.
It's working for sure. This team I think is my pick right now to win the entire Western Conference. This team is loaded, and I don't want to spend too much time on Colorado because I've absolutely gloated about them so much already this offseason. But this is a team just
Well, let's start off with them
everything is
bringing
so
in
good.
Burakovsky.
hmm
Let's start off with that.
Andre Burakovsky under $5 million per year, two
Okay,
year
let's
deal.
start with that. Okay, that's a huge bump for them.
hmm
Okay, I picked Colorado to win the West last year
hmm
with Dallas as my sleeper team. Okay, so now I have to go the exact opposite. So
Yes.
I'm going to say Colorado is going to be the sleeper team, and the next team that we talk about is who I'm picking.
Okay.
Okay, so
Uh,
I really do like what Colorado has done. They got depth, they've got scoring up the middle, they've got good wingers, they've got an excellent goaltending tandem. They really, really played well in the regular season. They were able to qualify as the second seed, or did they end up as the third seed?
second.
Second seed,
hmm
okay. And they played really well. and it was the toss up between them and Dallas,
Hmm.
and I think that Dallas just kind of maybe got a little bit, maybe a little lucky.
Well, Colorado's goaltenders got hurt, and I think
That's
that's
the
what
other
killed
thing
them in the
too.
playoffs.
Yeah,
Grubauer got hurt, and then Francouz got hurt shortly after, and they were starting Michael Hutchinson by the end of that second
that's right.
round series.
That's
So
right.
that certainly did not help
Tough to
the
win when you're down to
Avalanche.
your third place goalie.
Yeah, when you're
You
down to
know.
your third string goalie, it's hard to win in the playoffs. This team's just loaded everywhere. I mean, the question with them has been goaltending for the past couple of years. Is Grubauer that guy that is good enough to really take you deep? They haven't gotten past the second round yet with this core, but they're loaded up front. They're loaded on the back end. They added Devon Taves to that decor in just an incredibly good move by Joe Sakic. Um, you
Joe
know,
Sakic, man. That
he just
guy.
everything he touches has been gold for the Colorado Avalanche, and they brought in Brandon Saad to add to that already deadly forward
That's
group.
what I mean.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's just unbelievable what they've been able to do. But so yeah, Colorado I think is just going to be one of the absolute best teams in the league next season, and they still are under the cap, which is just remarkable given the amount of talent on this team. Um,
1.8 million, but
it's
hey, you're under the cap.
it's unreal. But that
I
brings
agree.
us now to their division rival and team that did make it to the Stanley Cup Finals last year, the Dallas Stars. Um,
This is the team that I picked as my sleeper team last year.
mm-hmm.
Okay, and they went on to go to the to Cup Finals.
Yep.
So I picked Colorado to be my winner of the West, and I picked Dallas as my sleeper team. Well, this year I'm going to go the exact opposite. I'm going to pick Dallas to come out of the West
Okay.
because I absolutely love what they did. I re-signing their goalie, I think was the best thing that they could have done. And even though Bishop has not played the best, you know what I mean, for
Mm-hmm.
them, I think that's a pretty decent combination down there
Mm-hmm.
in Dallas. But they've got the same kind of situation going on that Colorado does. Okay, they've got depth,
Mm-hmm.
they've got scoring, they've got defense, and they've got a really good goalie tandem.
Yes. So this offseason for the Stars has been more about keeping the band together rather than trying to make any significant changes. Rupe Hintz, new contract. Radek Faksa, new contract. Anton Hudobin, new contract. So they bring back three players that are really key pieces to this team that they needed to
Cores,
bring back.
cores to their team, cores guys that made the difference for that cup run
Mm-hmm.
are guys that they were able to continue to bring back.
Yes.
And that's why I like this team to win the West.
They've got one of the most underrated defensemen in the NHL in Miro Heiskanen on the back end, who has now become the number one guy for them,
Yep.
and really one of the top young defensemen in the league at just 21 years old. I mean, talk about a piece that you're going to be building around for years to come. We know they have the defense. We know they have the goaltending. To me, it's going to come down to scoring. This is a team that did not score a lot in the regular season last year and then just flipped it on in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that some of these guys were hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Corey Perry did miss some time, and you know what I mean, and Sagan missed some time,
And
and then
Sagan's going to miss significant time this season as well.
exactly. So that's my point. You know, so they're leading scorers. The guys that are bringing the offense are missing some time,
Mm-hmm.
and he's going to miss significant time this year. Even though he's going to miss significant time, I'm still picking them to win the West.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
The West is going to be fun to see where these teams are at. And Dallas, I think, is a particularly interesting team to look at because I feel like they could be anywhere. They could be all over the place. Like they got so hot in the playoffs last year. I was not expecting the Stars to go nearly as deep as they did, and then they got really hot in that Calgary series, and from then on they just were steamrolling. And I think they're a team that has the ability to do that. But the question is, are they going to get to that level, or are they a team that kind of I just feel like they could be anywhere. You never know what you're going to get with the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, it's always very difficult to repeat, because you're never the same team, quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote, that you are the year previously. But
Mm-hmm.
I think for the most part, they are.
Yeah, the lineup's
They,
very similar.
they haven't really removed anybody that was on the team. All they've done was
Y-
add places or kept people that were there on the team last year. They just kept them.
Yeah, Yanmark is probably the most significant guy that's gone. He's in Chicago now, and Corey Perry not re-signed either. But
Right.
Perry was very effective in his bottom six role of kind of being a pest, but he doesn't bring a whole lot offensively to the
Right.
table anymore at his age, and just the way that he's played over his career. That takes a toll on you physically, and he just doesn't have the offense that he once did.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they didn't lose a ton, but I think having Sagan's not going to be back until April most likely. That's
Mhm.
that's a big loss for them offensively, and I think it's going
It
to be tough
is.
for them to put up a lot of scoring without Tyler Sagan. But again, if you get Rupe Hintz firing on all cylinders, if you get Radek Faksa firing on all cylinders, and younger guys like a Joel Kiviranta who really had his coming out party in the
I was
playoffs,
just going to say, Ronta played really well in the playoffs.
if Kiviranta can play like he did in the playoffs, then maybe that will offset kind of the loss of Sagan a little bit and allow this team to still be one of those top teams in the West. They're going to be a very interesting team this coming year to see just where Dallas ends up and what kind of run they could possibly go on again.
We'll see. That's definitely going to be interesting. I like what they've done. I like that they're still maintaining status, and I think
Hmm.
even though Sagan's going to be out, I do think they're going to win the West. That's what I'm calling. So
All right, there we
I'm
go.
sticking to it.
Next up is Minnesota, another team that I look at and I'm kind of scratching my head at some of their
Yeah.
moves this offseason. I just don't know where Minnesota's at right now. They traded for Nick Bonino. They traded away Eric Stahl for Marcus Johansson, which is certainly a downgrade.
Yeah.
They traded
Huh?
away Luke Kunin, who was a younger player, to bring in Nick Bonino, who's 32 years old. Um, they re-signed Jonas Brodin to a massive contract at $6 million
Yeah.
per year
Yeah.
for not just the foreseeable future, but like the next 6-7 years. They made a change at goaltender. They traded away Devin Dubnyk, who had a
Yep.
horrendous season last year, and
Yeah.
brought in Cam Talbot, who has had a very inconsistent NHL career, but did
We'll
have a
say that.
solid season last year with
Yeah.
Calgary.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of interesting moves here for the Minnesota Wild, and I think the biggest one of all could have been their draft, getting Marco Rossi ninth overall, who I still cannot believe dropped that far in the draft. This is a guy with top five talent who
Yeah.
they got at ninth overall. Um,
I
I
don't
don't
believe
know.
how I don't know how he got that far, that he dropped that far, that he was able to that they were able to get him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just don't I they they just seem to be kind of irrelevant.
they're
Does that make
in they're
sense?
stuck in the middle, and it seems like they have been for so long now with Minnesota. They're not bad enough to get like top five picks. They're not bad enough to be one of the worst teams in the league, but they're not good enough to really make any noise in the postseason or anything. They're just
I
one of
mean,
those stuck in the middle type
yeah,
teams.
yeah. They qualified for the playoffs last year, but that's only because it was expanded.
Only yeah,
Eh,
they were not going to make the playoffs if
no,
it wasn't
no.
expanded.
Look, let's just face it. The Jets, the Wild, Coyotes, and the Blackhawks technically were not playoff teams
Yes, they were not
because
really
right,
playoff teams.
right. You only take the top eight, so
Mm-hmm.
9, 10, 11, and 12 were technically not playoff teams.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota Wild 35, 27, and 7 last year. That's technically not a playoff team in my book.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So didn't seem like they did really much of anything this year. They're 2.7 million in cap space they have, but could they be in the running for maybe a Mike Hoffman, or I mean, I don't know.
They'd have to clear some space somehow.
Yeah,
I don't know their
I
LTIR
don't know.
situation.
Yeah,
If
I
maybe
don't
if
know.
someone starts the season on LTIR, I don't know. It seems like they're kind of waiting for some of the younger guys to come up, but they're not getting to the point where they're bad enough to be getting those high draft picks either.
Yeah,
They have a very good defense. I mean, their defense: Spurgeon, Suter, Dumba, Brodeen, Susi, Patterin,
I
Hunt
mean
is a
those are good.
seven. They
Those are
have
all
a
good.
great defense core. Goaltending, I think, is a complete question mark with Talbot and Stalock as your pair tandem there. Like,
Yeah, because
complete question
Talbot's not
mark.
very consistent. You know,
Stalock's never been a starter. He's 33. He's never been a full-time starter. He's been a good backup his entire career, but never really taken the reins of a team.
yeah, as a full time starter, yeah,
And they don't have a lot of offense. They don't have a lot of offense here, and I don't think they've really added offense with the exception of the draft. They need Kaprizov to really work out. They need Joel Eriksson Ek to really take a step forward. They need Nico Sturm to do something at the NHL
something.
level. They need
Yeah,
Rossi to play this coming season. Maybe if all of those things happen, they could compete for, kind of like a wild card 7-8 type playoff spot. But
maybe.
I don't think they're likely to make the playoffs this year.
No, I'm not looking for them to do that either. And in order for, I think what's going to have to happen for Minnesota is they're going to have to get a big trade at the
Mm-hmm.
trade deadline, or they're going to have to get some big name here at the next off season
Mm-hmm.
or something like that, because I just don't see it happening for them this year.
Yeah, I don't either. I think they're kind of caught in the middle right now, and it's going to be interesting to see what Bill Guerin does with that team and just what kind of approach they take. Are they going to go into rebuild mode and take a couple years to load up on some young talent, or are they just going to try and somehow build into a consistent playoff team? But right now
Right?
they're right on the line in my opinion,
Yeah,
and
yeah, I agree.
that brings us to another team that I think is kind of right on that playoff line, and that's the Nashville Predators, who on paper should be one of the best teams in the Western Conference, but last season really struggled and had a extremely
Man,
disappointing season last
yeah, what
year.
happened?
That's a great question. What happened with the
I
Nashville
mean,
Predators, and what are we looking at with them going forward? Is
coach was fired half. Laviolette was fired
fired during the season.
during the
Hines
season,
comes in.
right?
They don't really
So
get any better or worse. It doesn't really change much.
they've got a lot of money though. They're sitting on like $12.9 million of cap
They
space.
do have a lot of cap space to work with, and you mentioned Mike Hoffman with the Minnesota Wild. I think the Nashville Predators are probably one of the top three teams in the running for Mike Hoffman right now. This is a team that could greatly use his scoring, as offense has been an issue for them, and just getting point production out of guys. It's you look at this team on paper, the 1-2 punch down the middle of Johansson and Duchesne, Philip Forsberg and Victor Arvidsson on the wings. You go to their defense core, they have the reigning Norris Trophy winner Roman Josi is their number one D-man. They have Ryan Ellis, they've got Matthias Ekholm, Dante Fabro, they've got Pekka Rinne and UC Saros in
I
goal.
mean,
This team on
man,
paper is stacked,
it
but they
does.
just
Yeah.
don't seem to perform on the ice. And
Do you think? Do you think it was? I mean, look, they fired the coach. They fired Peter Laviolette. Look, Peter Laviolette's won a cup.
mhm.
Okay, he's taken them to the playoffs almost virtually every year he's been there.
He's taken them to a Stanley Cup. He took Philadelphia to a Stanley Cup. He won a cup with Carolina. Laviolette, I think, is one of the best NHL coaches
That's what
and
I mean.
one of my favorite NHL coaches. Things didn't really change a whole lot when John Hines came in. They still weren't, the team that they were expected to be.
They didn't suddenly just explode into,
No,
oh, hey, this is what they are on paper. Well, the new coach comes in and, well, they still kind of look like the same team.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, Pekka Rinne well past his prime now at 38 years old. I mean, it's Saros' team now. We don't even know if Saros is a going to be able to take over
Yeah,
as a full-time starter. He had
yeah,
a very good regular season last year, but in that qualifying round series against Arizona, in which Nashville somehow lost,
yeah.
Saros did not look good. So
No.
um, I don't know. There's a lot of questions here. It's going to be about, whether or not these guys who are getting paid to perform or not. And if you don't get that, you're going to see this team be on the edge of the
On the
playoffs or
bottom.
maybe
Yep.
miss the playoffs. And if
Yeah.
they do perform, I think they could be, a top team in the West. It's just, Johansson, Duchesne, Forsberg, these guys have got to show up.
Yeah. I mean, they did 35, 26, and 8 last year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They did qualify for the playoffs as a 6th seed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But they lost in the first round.
Yeah.
Yeah. They it wasn't pretty.
It was not a good season for Nashville,
No,
not what
it
they were
just wasn't.
expected to be.
I mean, to finish 6th seed, and they were fighting for that 6th seed there at the end.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So yeah, with all the list of guys they have on their team and with the goaltending and everything, yeah, that just doesn't seem right. But so it's going to be interesting to see how they pan out this year, especially with sitting on all that money. And if that does pan out, if Mike Hoffman does go to the Nashville Predators,
Mm-hmm.
that could be the switch for them. That could be the point, the turning point for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I would really like to see them make a strong push for Hoffman and try and bring him in because that could add enough scoring to that forward group to get to a point where I think that would be a huge boost for them and really kind of propel them a bit in the standings.
Yeah. Agreed, 100%. You know what I mean? So, all right, my man. Well, moving on and moving up.
St. Louis.
St. Louis. Woo!
Interesting team.
Stanley Cup champions 2 years ago.
Yes, interesting team to talk about because they've had quite the offseason. There haven't been a lot of changes, but they had one very, very big change, and that's Alex Pietrangelo, captain, number one defenseman, I think a top 5 defenseman in the NHL, no longer with the St. Louis Blues, and they've brought in Torrey Krug, who, let's face it, is not a direct replacement for Alex Pietrangelo. Is a nice addition to help soften the blow of losing Pietrangelo, but is not going to outright replace Pietrangelo. So, man, the Blues, a cup winner a couple years ago, and now I'm starting to wonder with this team. I certainly think that they're a playoff team. They're still very talented, but I don't know if they're really. I don't know if I look to them to be that cup level team anymore.
See, they finished number 1 seed last year, and they were actually projected to take the cup.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Everybody was projecting the Blues because they had won it the previous year, right? And the best quote I've ever heard ever by one of my most favorite coaches in the whole world, and I loved him as a player, is Chief, why did you lose? Because they scored more goals than we did. Okay, is that it? We're done? Okay.
Yep.
And he gets up and leaves.
Yep.
Gotta like a coach like that.
Yes, very much. But
they have a bit of a cap issue. They're a little bit over right now, but some of these things are going to probably work themselves out.
Steen to LTIR probably won't play this entire season, so there's almost $6 million right there. Also, Tarasenko, $7.5 million. He's starting the year on LTIR, and it won't even be evaluated again until February. You can't. This is now shoulder problem number 3, I believe, for Vladimir Tarasenko, and you cannot like that if you're the St. Louis Blues.
Nope.
They still need to sign Vince Dunn. He's a 24-year-old defenseman who, with Pietrangelo gone, is going to be looking to play a bigger role in the lineup. They need to get him signed. So they're going to need
him. Yeah.
They need to get him signed.
Well, it's like what we said earlier in the show. I think now that we have a date,
we're going to start to see a lot of these things happen. I completely agree with that.
Yeah. Within the next within the next, say, 2 weeks, you're going to start seeing a lot of these free agency names and trades and stuff. And I think it's almost going to be like a second wave
of the offseason
of a free agency or of an off-season kind of thing, because everybody's just waiting around to see what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I think you're going to see the big-name free agents left, like Granlund and Hoffman and Vatanen and Hamonic, and those guys will sign once we get a confirmed date and a confirmed look at what next year is going to be like. And I think you're going to start to see trades. There's been no trading this offseason. There's been nothing. I
Well,
mean, the
that's
Devon
not
Taves.
true. That's not true. That's not true. There's been some signings.
Yeah, there's been signings, but there's been no trading. There's been
Right.
virtually no trading,
Yeah.
other than right at towards the beginning when you had the Devon Taves trade and you had the trade for Zadorov and Saad between Colorado
Sod, yeah.
and
But that was
Chicago.
right at
But
the beginning.
yeah, there hasn't been anything going on recently. I think once things for next year get solidified, I think you're going to start to see the trade market pick up as well.
Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Yeah, guaranteed.
But
Speaking of trade markets and everything else, Winnipeg Jets be the last team here for the West. What
yeah,
do you think, man?
Winnipeg is they're interesting. They still don't have a lot defensively, but they have the reigning Vezina Trophy winner in Connor Hellebuck in goal, which kind of certainly can cover for that defense a little bit.
Slightly.
They brought back Paul Stastny
I think
to
that
be
was a
their
good move for
second
them.
line center. I think that's a really good move for them.
Yeah, for sure.
Brian Little probably not going to play this year, so he'll be on LTIR. So that opens up over
Okay.
$5 million in cap space for them.
Because
Um,
they were a little bit over.
that
Um,
they won't be once Little goes to LTIR. They brought in Nate Thompson as a depth forward. The forward group is good, even though Patrick Laine continues to be constantly talked about in trade rumors. It's still wonder to see if he gets moved actually or not. But
they did bring in Sammy Niku as well for a defenseman.
yeah,
So
depth D
depth
man
defenseman,
gets
yeah,
re-signed there.
yeah. So I mean, I'll tell you what, Winnipeg, they're an odd duck, if I can use that phrase,
They are.
because they lost Bufflin for I don't even know what happened with all that.
He just didn't.
I
He just didn't want to
didn't
play.
want to play anymore, I guess, for
Yeah,
Winnipeg or for the
it
NHL or
was a very
whatever.
odd situation
Exactly. And they they did qualify for the playoffs this past year because it was
because it
expanded,
was expanded.
but normally they wouldn't have. 37, 28, and 6 they finished last year. I see them kind of being towards the bottom more so this year. I don't really see them making that much of an improvement with their team as far as that's concerned. They did re-sign some other guys and everything, but just not seeing
Yeah,
it.
I don't think Winnipeg's going to be any better than they were last year. They're
Right.
still this defense core is still in shambles. You've got Josh Morrissey and then a bunch of depth guys. They brought back Dylan DeMello, who's a nice piece, but d- nowhere near being a top four,
Yeah.
top
Yeah.
pair type guy. Maybe top four. I think Dylan DeMello is better as a number 5. They've got Neil Pionk, who probably is going to play with Josh Morrissey. Again, a guy I think is better off kind of in a 4 or 5 type role.
Yeah.
Derek Forbert, bottom pair guy. Spiza, Pullman are borderline NHLers to begin with. There's not a whole lot there on the back end. I worry about their defense. And can Connor Hellebuck really do what he did last season again? Like that's
Yeah.
asking so much of him
Yeah.
to repeat the level of play that he had last season where he was the best goalie in the league.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a lot to ask.
They have an incredibly good top 6 forward group too, which is kind of frustrating. It must be really frustrating if you're a Jets fan because you've got Connor, Scheifele, and Wheeler as your top line. You have Ehlers, Stastny, and Line as your second line. That is a Stanley Cup level top 6 forward group. Then you've got guys like Lowry and Perreault and Kopp and Thompson now rounding out your depth pieces. Like they have a cup level forward group, but their
Yeah.
defense is
That's
just not
not
even
quite.
close. Not even close.
I
So
mean, they had. Go ahead.
that's got to be really really frustrating.
It is. They were very like last year. They had 216 goals for, but they had 203 goals against. Now, that's not the lowest, but that's not the most either.
Mhm.
Okay. So, yeah, until that defense gets more rounded into shape
Mhm.
and is able to balance out the scoring that they have up front, then yeah, these guys are going to be able to put up points, but then so is the other team.
Mhm. Yeah, and that happened a lot for the Jets last year. Even with the best goalie in the league and the Vezina Trophy winner in goal, they were still giving up goals because that defense is just. I don't see where they've gotten really better, and I think they're going to be around what they were last year, which will be just outside of a playoff spot, in my
Looking in.
opinion.
Yep. Yep. I'm going to have to agree with you on that. I haven't seen anything out of that team that makes me even think that they're going to try to be anything better than what they were this past year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to agree with you 100% on that. I think they're going to be on the outside looking in.
All right, so that does it for the Western Conference, and now we're going to make the switch to the East. We went a little over time there on the West, so we'll hopefully be a little bit quicker here with the East. But we might as well start in the Atlantic Division and talk about my team if we're going in
Oh,
alphabetical
boy.
order
Hey,
here.
wait. You said you wanted to try to get through this quicker?
Yeah,
And the first team we're talking about in the East is Boston?
the Boston Bruins. So this is a team that I still don't really know how I feel about their offseason. They obviously losing Torrey Krug was a big thing that happened here for the Bruins.
Yeah.
And they have no replacement for him. They have no replacement for Krug. They're going to be relying heavily on Charlie McAvoy and Brandon Carlo and Matt Grzelcyk now to kind of take those steps up and become even better players and take those steps forward. That's the only way Boston's going to be able to have a decent decor at this point, because beyond that, it's all depth guys. It's Clifton and Lausanne and Moore and Miller.
They didn't really go out and get anybody
They
to
have
replace.
not added a defenseman at all.
They did add DeBrusk, the left winger.
Well, they re-signed DeBrusk
as they re-signed him. Okay.
And they brought in Craig Smith.
Okay.
Which is, I really liked the Craig Smith move. Secondary scoring was a huge issue for the Bruins. Has been for the past number of years. Craig Smith, I think, is going to help with that a lot. But the biggest problem is David Pastrnak and Brad Marchand both will not be ready for the start of this season and are probably going to miss time into February. So to lose those two off of your top line on a team that heavily relies on their top line for scoring, it's going to be a massive problem for Boston. Their defense is downgraded.
Especially when you count on those guys too for the power play.
Oh, absolutely.
Those guys play on PP1.
They had one of the best power plays in the league. They're not going to have those
President's
guys.
Trophy winning Boston.
They will not be the President's Trophy winner this season. This team is not going to be the team that they were. I see a step back here with the Boston Bruins.
Question for you. Chara coming back?
I don't think so.
I don't either.
I don't think so.
I don't see it. I mean, they don't have. They're not. They got 2.9 in space.
I mean,
so they're not like in purgatory or anything.
Yeah, no. If Chara comes back, it's going to be like a 1 year, $1 million deal anyway. I just don't think. I feel like if it was going to happen, it would have already.
Yeah.
I feel like it would have already. Like, what's the holdup? I don't see it. I do think they might go out and try and get a depth type defenseman, like a Travis Hamonic type or something like that, just to have another body there. But they have not replaced Torrey Krug, and there is not a replacement out there. So that I think is a big downgrade for Boston as far as defense goes.
Yeah. Look, I'm still counting on Boston to be even without Marchand for the start of the season. I'm still expecting them to be a very, very, very good team. The fact that they didn't have to do too terribly much this offseason, keep guys in-house, but now they're just dealing with a little bit of injuries, so they might go out and try to get some depth guys to come in and fill in until those guys can come back. But I'm looking for Boston to be in the top 4 this coming year.
Yeah, I think Boston will be a playoff team, but I think we're not going to see them be a top team like they were last season.
Or 14 total losses last year. That's it. They played 70 games and lost 14 games. Gosh. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think.
Even if you slip 20 games, you're still good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so.
It's We'll see with the Bruins. I think they've gotten. I don't think they've gotten certainly any better. I think they've slipped a little bit this offseason.
Yeah.
And we'll have to see how the injury situation with Pastrnak and Marchand works out. But that brings us to Buffalo, who, man, went out and got the top forward on the market and brought in Taylor Hall this offseason, which certainly improves their forward group. And they also traded for Eric Stahl to come in and be a second line center, which now finally gives them a legitimate second line center and allows Sam Reinhart to play right wing, which I think he's better off as.
Agreed.
But there's still so many questions here with Buffalo. This is a team that has the longest playoff drought in the NHL, 9 seasons without making the postseason. And Taylor Hall's not exactly a player that comes in and drastically changes teams. I mean, when he was in Edmonton, they were not a playoff team, and he goes to New Jersey and they made the playoffs once his MVP season as a wild
Yeah.
card team, but then haven't made
And
it
that's it.
since.
Yeah.
And I don't think, a lot of Buffalo fans seem to think that, okay, Taylor Hall's here, we're just automatically going to be good. That's not really how it works. And Taylor Hall's not the kind of player that drastically changes teams like that. And there's still a lot of questions here with Buffalo, particularly on defense and in goal. The scoring's going to be there. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The scoring's going to be there for the Sabres. I just don't think they can keep the puck out of their own net.
Yeah, that's going to be the thing. Look, they were able to bring Olofsson,
Yeah,
Victor
Olofsson
Olofsson.
re-signed,
Yeah,
Reinhart
he
re-signed,
signed.
and
So they were able to keep some of those guys.
mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, yeah, I don't know. I can't quite put my finger on the Sabres. They didn't obviously qualify for the playoffs again last year.
Not even the
Um,
expanded playoffs.
Not even the expanded playoffs by like 2 games, I think, or
Mm-hmm.
something. But it just doesn't seem like they just seem to do a little bit, but just never really enough.
Yes. Yep.
And they seem to get good draft picks. I mean, Jack Eichel, what?
Unbelievable. One of the best players in the
How,
league.
how are you not building around this guy? How are you basically leaving this guy out there to be by himself for the most part?
Yep.
Tyler Hall is not that big of an addition to bring in. You know what I mean? To help take some of that. No, I don't know what to say about Buffalo. I can't put my thumb on it. I can't put my finger on it. But I don't think they're pretty much going to go anywhere other than where they are right now.
No, I don't either. And I see, you look at Taylor Hall and what do they expect bringing him in? Arizona brought him in a trade last year, and Arizona was not any significantly better with Taylor Hall than they were before having him. And I think you're going to see the same thing with the Sabres. There's still massive questions with this defense. Other than Rasmus Dahlin, they don't have really a top-level guy. It's a lot of depth players on that defense for Buffalo, and I just really don't see them. I don't see them being a playoff team this year, and I don't think Taylor Hall drastically changes that. The offense is going to be there. They're going to score, but I just don't think the overall team game is there.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you on that for sure.
All right, so on now to a new team and
Ooh.
a rebuilding team where we have Steve Yzerman at the helm of the Detroit Red Wings now, who were, I would say last year's Detroit Red Wings were the worst post-lockout team that I have ever seen.
Yeah.
If you take the 2005 lockout and split it into pre-lockout and post-lockout, salary cap era, this is the last year's Red Wings team were the worst team that I've seen. They were awful.
17 wins.
7, not even 20 wins last year. But
this is coming from a team who, this is Hockey Town, USA.
Yeah, a team that made the playoffs for 25 straight seasons.
This is a team that, expects to win the cup.
Mm-hmm.
They don't hope to win the cup. They expect to win the cup. Steve Yzerman, I have all the faith in the world in this guy, and I'm really liking what they're doing right now.
Oh, yeah. I think they've had a tremendous offseason for a rebuilding
the draft and what he's been able to do there.
Mm-hmm.
He's another one of those guys like Joe Sakic, what Joe Sakic's doing in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
I really like what Yzerman's doing back in Detroit.
Yes.
He's going to – I look to that team to be much improved.
Mm-hmm.
Let's face it. If you only win 17 games, it doesn't take much to be drastically improved.
Yes, absolutely.
So, but I do look for them to be drastically improved, and I do look to them to be more of a knocking on the door to try to get in there. I mean, I just looked, I just have that feeling. They just seem like that team that's on the rise.
Yeah, I don't think they're there yet. I think this is going
Right.
to be a process with Detroit. But Stevie Y built the Tampa Bay Lightning, and look at where the Tampa Bay Lightning are now.
Hoisted the cup.
We know this guy can build a team. I think it's just going to be about patience. I think
Time.
they've had a tremendous offseason with the guys that they've brought in, trading for getting a pick and also getting Mark Stahl, which they traded for the pick, but they got Mark Stahl kind of as a consolation prize. Very good veteran player for these young players to learn from. Bobby Ryan coming in, same thing with everything that he's been through in his career. Great guy to have in that locker room. They've kept their young players that they've needed, like obviously Larkin signed long term, but they've brought back Anthony Mantha, they've brought back Tyler Bertuzzi. Um, they've given young players a chance. A guy like Vlad Nemesnikov coming in, he's going to get a shot. Robbie Fabry came over last year. He's getting a serious shot at the lineup. So it's a rebuilding team, obviously, here with the Red Wings, but they're doing it the right way. They're doing it very well. And, they're going to have to keep building with their prospect pool. Guys like Moritz Seider, young defensemen like Philip Hronek and Dennis Cholowski.
Yeah.
Lucas Raymond drafted 4th overall. It's about patience and building with this young core, and they're a team that's going to be on the rise in the near future.
Yeah. Not obviously. I mean, look, you can get better than 17 wins.
Yeah, they're going to be better this year than they were
But
last year.
they're not going to be, yeah, they're definitely going to be better than what they were last year. But I think you're right. I think we're about 2 years away from these guys really being, look, I still think they're going to be a team on the rise. I
Mm-hmm.
think they're going to continually get better and better and better as the years go on,
Mm-hmm.
as their young core starts to be infiltrated into the team itself. You know what I mean? And that's why I think Detroit's going to be a much better team, like, say, 2023.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% agree with you on that.
Yeah, maybe not next year, and maybe not 2022, but 2023. Look out.
Yeah, I agree
Yeah,
with that for sure.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that brings us to the Florida Panthers. Interesting.
Eek, 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 eek. Scratching your
Florida.
head on this one.
Yeah, this is one, I don't want to spend too much time on the Panthers and go too in depth, but
I agree.
Hoffman still unrestricted free agent, maybe could go back to Florida, but at this point
I
probably
doubt it.
not. They lost Dadonov, so
Yep.
there's two scoring wingers out of your top 6.
They haven't
Um
replaced really.
they haven't replaced them. No,
I
they
mean, they
haven't brought
brought
in
in
any top
Mackenzie
6 wingers.
Weegar, but
They re-signed Mackenzie Weegar. They needed to do that. He's a good young defenseman. I like. They brought in Radko Gudas to kind of round out that decor. He's a bottom pair physical
yeah, but
guy.
Gudis is going to be, but I like Gudis's game, because I think he's going to be good in the room for them,
Oh, I do too. Yes.
but especially with a lot of those young guys that they have.
And he's gonna protect his teammates as well. He brings that physical game too, that they kind of lost when they Josh Brown was traded. So
Yeah.
yeah, Gudis I do like as an addition. I think it's going to be a solid depth piece there. For me, Florida comes to how good or how not they're going to be is going to come down to Sergei Bobrovsky. They gave this guy $10 million per season, and this guy was a dumpster fire last year, giving up over 3 goals per game, horrendous save percentage, just an absolutely terrible year for Bobrovsky. He's got to have a bounce back year, or they are going to be in
Hmm.
big, big trouble.
They did qualify for the playoffs this past year, but I think that Bobrovsky, he's a very fickle type of a person,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
personally, and he's one of them strange people. He's a goalie.
He's a goalie, absolutely. It's
Okay,
all in
now
the
look,
head.
I love goalies because one of my good close personal friends is a goalie.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to be careful with what I say, but I will say this: Bobrovsky, I think he's going to be able to once he starts to see that things are coming in front of him a little bit more, he'll be more engaged.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think is going on with Bobrovsky. He doesn't see it in front of him, so he's like, "Well, why should I bother? There's nobody playing in front of me."
Hmm.
Maybe. I mean, just my opinion. It could be. I think they're going to be a little bit more improved with Bobrovsky this year, but I really don't know what to say about them. They've got $8 million in cap space. They're going to probably lose Mike Hoffman. They really haven't replaced him. They're not looking to replace him.
No.
I'll tell you what I would really like to see with Florida. I would like to see them grab somebody like JVR or somebody like Shane Gostisbehere from the Flyers,
Hmm.
because that would help them tremendously across the board, no matter what. If it was JVR, that would help with their scoring.
Yep.
If it was Gostisbehere, that would help with their D, right? Either one of those players, and they have the cap space to take either one of those players or both if they want it.
Yeah, it would be interesting for sure to see like a JVR type player added to that team, especially with Dadonov and Hoffman both gone now. I don't know if they want to take on that contract or if they're going to kind of wait and see with some other players. I don't know. Florida's just in a weird spot, I think.
Yeah,
And,
oddball spot. So
they're on that cusp. Like, they're on that line. They could be a wild card team. They might not make the playoffs. It's going to rely a lot, I think, on how Bobrovsky plays in goal. And
agreed.
they
And what
just,
they do in the next couple weeks.
yeah. I just wonder if they're a team that's kind of looking to make a move right now, or if they're just kind of go into this season with what they have and just say, we're going to
Yeah,
go with it and see what happens. I don't
yeah.
know.
I don't
Florida's
know.
in an interesting spot.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But now, how about from an interesting spot to wow? How about those Canadians?
Yeah, Montreal. And the more I look at it, the more I'm so intrigued with their offseason and everything. They've made a lot of moves. Montreal's made a lot of changes.
Impressive.
And
But
it's been good in a lot of ways, but then there are some question marks in there that I look at and I go, well, they better hope that that works out. And I
here's the
don't.
thing I want to bring up, though. Here's the thing I want to bring up, and this goes to all the teams that have made major drastic changes
Mm-hmm.
to their lineups by bringing in free agents in the whole 9 yards.
Yep.
Okay. Look, here's the reality of what we're going to have to deal with right now, and this is why I think this is going to affect a lot of the teams that made a lot of moves this year, and the teams that didn't make the moves I think are going to benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by this is the fact that we're going to have a shortened camp. We're going to have very little practice time.
Yep.
We're going to try and shove 56 games in
To a short
from
period of time.
from February until what? The end of March or the end of April, right?
Yeah.
56 games. That's going to
Mm-hmm.
work out to like 4.5 games or almost 5 games a week
Mm-hmm.
or something crazy like that. So that doesn't give you a lot of practice time. That doesn't give you a lot of time to learn with your teammates. And camp is only going to be 2 weeks.
And we're hearing no preseason games as well.
Right. So all these teams, like, say, Montreal,
Mm-hmm.
who did a lot of moves in the offseason, who now suddenly find themselves with a, for the most part, new team,
Yep.
that's going to affect them moving forward. That's going to
Chemistry.
affect every team moving forward, especially the teams that made a lot of moves.
Yeah, there's not a lot of time to get that chemistry built up. You've got to be right into it and firing on all cylinders, or it could go downhill rather quickly. And when we look at all the changes that Montreal made, I mean, the trading away Max Domi for Josh Anderson and then giving Anderson this massive 7-year deal when he
Yeah.
really hasn't been able to stay healthy, that's the question mark move, in my opinion, for Montreal. That was
Agreed.
the one that I looked at, and I didn't mind the trade because Domi struggled
Wasn't working out
last
there.
year, and it wasn't working out. So trading him for Anderson in itself wasn't a head scratcher, but then giving Anderson this 7-year deal at $5.5 million per year, that
That's
was
the head scratcher.
that was the Bergevin move that I looked at
Yeah.
and just went, what is this guy thinking? But other than that, I like a lot of what they've done this offseason. They brought in Tyler Toffoli. They got Brendan Gallagher re-signed. They brought in Joel Edmondson to help round out that decor, which I like Edmondson a lot. I think he
Yeah.
brings a good physical
Yeah.
defensive game there. And I think you're going to see Edmondson play with Jeff Petrie. and Petrie will be the offensive guy. Edmondson will be the defensive guy, and that could be a really solid middle pair for the
Yeah.
Canadians. And they addressed one of the biggest issues with this team that they desperately needed to address, and that's backup goaltender. They brought in Jake Allen from the Blues to back up Carey Price, and finally, Carey Price has an adequate backup now,
I
so he
mean,
doesn't have to play every single game and get tired before the playoffs start.
Here's something else too I like about what Montreal's done. I like the guys that they've been drafting
Mm-hmm.
and the guys that are bringing up like Suzuki, like
Suzuki,
Jockey and Nemi,
yep,
right? Those two guys right there shined in the playoffs.
they
They
did.
they they came to the fore in the playoffs for Montreal, and I think they're going to have a much better year coming up this year for them, and they're going to be playing more significant roles
Mm-hmm.
on the team for them this year. And look at what they did to the Philadelphia Flyers.
Yep.
Okay, they didn't win that series, but they really outplayed Philadelphia. They really kind of out hit Philadelphia and out
Mm-hmm.
muscled Philadelphia. I am not looking forward to playing Montreal this year.
No,
No, they are
no.
going to be a tough, tough team. Look for them to be significantly improved this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Suzuki and Kotkaniemi are going to play huge roles this coming year and really take that next step forward into becoming star players. And Montreal, I think they're going to be a playoff team. I don't care
Yep.
what the divisions look like. I think
Yeah.
Montreal is going to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
And you've got an improved team now in front of Carey Price, who's still one of the best goalies in the league. And
Yeah.
this is a team that should be able to make the postseason, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah. I agree. I agree 100%. Speaking of making the postseason, how about a team that didn't with the Ottawa Senators?
And probably
Uh,
isn't again.
no, probably not.
Ottawa to me is in a very similar spot to the Detroit Red Wings. They're a rebuilding team with a ton of young talent that they're just kind of waiting on.
Yeah,
It,
and
it,
they've got a lot of money they're sitting on too.
Yeah, but they're going to have to sign a lot of these guys who are on their ELCs right now to longer term, bigger, much bigger contracts when their ELCs are up. So I think it's smart for Ottawa to kind of just sit on the money right now and wait. Brady Tkachuk's going to need a new contract, Drake Batherson, Logan Brown, and then, the guys they've got coming up in their prospect pool. I mean, look at what they did in the draft, getting Jake Sanderson
Yeah,
to add to that decor, and then
yeah, I
also
agree though.
getting Tim Stutzla third overall. Like it's a waiting game with the Ottawa
It
Senators.
is, it is, and but I agree with you though. They were able to bring in with Connor Brown. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They were able to get that taken care of. Alex Galchenyuk, they were able to get that done. You know what I mean? So Ottawa, they're probably the same thing. I'll say the same thing about Ottawa that I did about Detroit. They're
Mm-hmm.
probably 2 years away.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're in a very similar spot to the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, they've got a lot of money to sit on. You know what I mean, and they're just. I agree. I think they're waiting for their up and comers
Mm-hmm.
to finish out their entry level contracts so they can start signing these guys and start integrating them in with the team a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And I look for Ottawa to look. They 25 and 34 and 12 last year. Okay, I think nothing but up for them this year. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they're not going to be in the playoffs. They're not going to be sniffing for a wild card, but they're going to be an improved team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. They got Matt Murray in goal now, who uh, you don't know how that's going to work out long term. He's been inconsistent set over the past couple years, had
Yeah.
some injury issues. But if Matt Murray can be the franchise guy, the starter for Ottawa, they're set in goal now for the
Yep.
next 4 years.
Yep.
And their prospect pool is just one of the best in the league. So it's a waiting game with the Senators. They have some kind of roster filler players in there right now. But as these young guys start to develop and become full-time NHLers, I think you're going to see Ottawa start launching back into being a competitive team and one of the better ones in the Eastern Conference. So bright future for them, but just not ready yet right now with
Right.
the Ottawa Senators.
All right. Hey, how about the Stanley Cup winning Tampa Bay Lightning?
Yeah.
Woo! Man, what do you say about them guys?
Well,
Gee, they won the cup.
yeah, they won the 2020 Stanley Cup. Incredibly talented team, just built
Yeah,
so well.
yeah.
Yzerman laid the groundworks, and then in came Julien Brisebois, who is Yzerman's assistant, takes over as the GM when Yzerman leaves for Detroit. And he did a fantastic job in his own right in filling out that lineup with the little pieces that were missing and doing a really good job of it. The only problem now for the Tampa Bay Lightning is holy cow, salary cap trouble.
Yeah.
Um,
A little bit of purgatory going on
uh,
there. Woo!
they're beyond purgatory. They're down below with their salary cap space. They are already over the cap, and they still do not have Anthony Cirelli re-signed or Eric Chernak re-signed. Uh, I don't know. A lot of their players that they would like to move out, guys like a Tyler Johnson, Yanni Gourde, Andre Palat, who are on pretty big contracts, all have some sort of no movement clause or no trade clause in their deals. So it's going to be kind of tough to get those guys moved. Um, Other teams around the league, they're not going to go out of their way to help Tampa Bay. So Tyler Johnson is not just going to get moved. Obviously, they waived him. We're hoping that a team would pick him up on waivers, and that did not happen. No team's just going to help this team out. I mean, Tampa's going to be a good team without, even if they don't have Cirelli and Chernak there, they're still such a good team. But this, to me, it's all about the salary cap situation for the Lightning
Yeah,
right now and trying to
yeah,
keep this team somewhat together.
somewhat. Yeah, because I think that's what you're going to run into, is that right there. You're going to probably lose some of these players
Oh,
because you're just
absolutely.
not going
You
to be able to
have to.
re-sign them.
You
Yeah,
have to.
you're just not going to be able to re-sign them. I don't look for Tampa Bay to repeat.
I don't either.
I do look for them to be very strong contenders. I do look for them to be uh, at least in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
I think,
Absolutely.
I mean, look, they only lost 21 games last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, all things considered, if even if they lose those two guys, okay, but you know what I mean?
Yep.
I still think Tampa Bay is a pretty darn good team. They did win the cup last year. A lot the statistics say that if you win the cup the previous year, your chances of coming back the following year are not nearly as good. But also the statistics point out too that most teams that make the that win the cup the following year don't even make the playoffs the next year. I just don't see that happening with Tampa Bay.
No, they're absolutely going to be a playoff team, but
I
I
agree.
never pick teams to repeat. I never pick teams to repeat because it just doesn't happen. Pittsburgh did it in 16 and 17, and that's been it since 2000.
Yeah.
The last
And
team to do it before that was the Red Wings in 97 and 98.
yep.
Repeats just don't happen. So
And when was the time before that was Philadelphia. They did it in 75, 76. And didn't Colorado was Colorado or no was LA didn't LA do it once? They
no,
did back to
LA
back.
did
They
it
did
in
back to back.
LA never went back to back. They did
Okay.
2012 and 2014.
Yeah.
Chicago won 3 cups, never went back to back. 10,
Okay.
13, and 15. You just
Okay.
don't see teams repeat. Um, so I
Well, not like the old Montreal teams or not like the old Detroit Red Wing teams.
no, not like no, the days of winning 4 cups in a row like the Islanders in the early 80s, just you don't
Gone.
see anything like that.
Can't.
No, the salary cap era, you just can't do it. So
Nope.
Tampa, again, I think is going to be a really good team. I think they'll go deep into the playoffs, but they're not going to win the cup again. And they've still got a lot that they need to figure out as far as salary cap is concerned with that team.
Agreed. Agreed. But hey, they seem to be in good hands, so we'll see how things work out for them. You know what I mean? So the other thing too that we didn't even talk about either, and is he going to be coming back? Are we going to see him, Stamkos?
Steven Stamkos, yeah. I would think that after all of this time, he should be healthy at this point. I really haven't heard anything. He
Me neither.
hasn't been talked about at all.
Nope.
But he played 2 shifts in the playoffs.
2 minutes and 47 seconds.
So like 3 shifts in the playoffs, and that was it. He did score a goal, and it
Scored
was a
one goal.
very uplifting, emotional goal for the Lightning. But they need him back, especially if Cirelli doesn't get a contract done. They need Steven Stamkos back healthy.
that's why I mentioned that, because if they don't get Sorelli back and if Stamkos is not there, that's a big problem. And Tampa Bay is a different team.
Absolutely, absolutely. But that brings us now to the last team here for the Atlantic, and we're talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs, who, again, another pretty active offseason for the Maple Leafs, who continue to underperform and underachieve from what people expect them to do. They lost in the qualifying round to the Columbus Blue Jackets, and obviously their fans were not happy with that. And again, defense, such a problem for this
Yeah,
team.
yeah,
They went out and obviously they let Cody Ceci go. They let Tyson Barrie go, both guys who did not live up to what they were supposed to be. And they
true.
brought in TJ Brody from the Calgary Flames, 30-year-old defenseman, $5 million per season for the next 4 years. I like that move a lot. I'm a big fan of TJ Brody. I think he's a solid two-way guy to add to that decor rather than trying to bring in offensive defensemen who then turn the puck over and cause more defensive problems. Brody's a really good two-way guy, so
Yeah,
I like
yeah,
that move a lot. They also made some depth moves up front, bringing in Wayne Simmons, who gives them some toughness that they desperately needed. They brought
yeah,
in Joe Thornton, in a kind of a weird move in my opinion, because they already had Jason Spezza there, so I don't really understand.
yeah,
Spezza and Thornton are kind of the same thing at this point, so I don't know why you need both of them, but
yeah.
um, that's been the moves for the Maple Leafs, and this is a team that continues to get bounced early in the playoffs. Is this going to be a year where they finally break through and win a playoff series, or are we looking at more of the same?
Okay, here's the thing with with uh, uh, Anderson Frederick Anderson. I'm sorry, Frederick Anderson
Yep.
and Jack Campbell. I mean, are those the goalies that you could rest your laurels on and say, okay? I mean, is Anderson that guy? Can he be the starting goalie?
I think Anderson's a very good goalie if he had a real defense in front of him. I did a video on this on my channel.
I know.
Anderson's save percentage numbers are very good in the
Yeah.
playoffs. With the
Okay.
exception of 2018, he was very poor in the 2018 playoffs. But in 2019 and in 2020, his save percentage numbers in the postseason are fantastic. The defense in front of him is not.
Right. That's exactly right. Okay. So going to be interesting to see how these guys go. That's for sure.
Yeah.
They they qualified. They were the eighth seed.
Yep.
So they qualified. They're going to be a bubble team, I think, again this year because they didn't really address their defense like they should have, as much as they should have. And I think they're going to be a bubble team this year, where they may make the playoffs, they may not. I think they're going to
Mm.
be fighting.
Okay, I think Toronto does make the playoffs. I like
You think
TJ
so?
Brody. I think Toronto
I
does
do
make the
too, but
playoffs. But to me, the question with them is can they finally win a playoff series? 'Cause it's
yeah, they
been
haven't been able to do that yet.
2017 lost to Washington, 2018 lost to Boston, 2019 lost to Boston, 2020 lost to
Lost to
Columbus.
Columbus.
They cannot win a playoff series.
Nope.
They've got to find a way to break through that. If not, I mean, it's going to be a problem for the Maple Leafs because they're underachieving in the postseason every
Yep.
single year.
I mean, they play really well in the regular season for the most part,
They
36,
score a
25,
ton
and
of
9.
goals.
Score a ton of goals. They were 238 goals for, so
Hmm.
they were one, two, third in the league on the East for most goals scored,
It's the
behind
defense.
Tampa Bay and behind Capitals.
Yep, it's the
So,
defense.
oh, and the Rangers. So, but their defense is just no good. They have the offense, but their defense,
Well,
not happening. Their defense gave up 227
jeez,
goals against. That
that
is
is not good.
Florida gave up one more goal, 228. Rangers gave up 221. Montreal 221. Yeah, everybody else. Capitals gave up 215. Everybody else is in the hundreds.
Yep.
So, yeah, they need defense.
We'll see if TJ Brody can help turn
Help
things
out.
around
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
But
I mean,
that's it for the Atlantic Division. We're going to move to the Metro now as we are getting close to the 2-hour mark here. The Metro Division, starting with Carolina. A team that I'm a huge fan of personally and really,
Yep.
really like going forward. So much
Me
young
too.
talent there, stacked on the back end.
Yep.
Um,
Love
Not
the
a lot
coach.
of love the coach. Rod Brindamore, one of my favorite, incredibly good players coach. They
He
love
was one of my
playing for
favorite
him.
players.
Yep.
Roddy Brindamore, one of my favorite players.
And
That
the
guy came to work every day.
and the players in Carolina love playing for him, which I think
Exactly.
gets the most out of those players and kind of
Exactly.
allows this team to be even better than what they are on paper.
Agreed.
Um, uh,
Can't go wrong with that. When you
not
have
a
good coaching,
Yep, not a lot of changes this offseason. Justin Williams retires, but
officially.
yes, finally officially retires. Like Joel Edmondson traded to the Montreal Canadiens, but there really wasn't a spot for him on this decor because they're so
Nope.
loaded on defense.
Yep.
No real other major changes.
They
So
re-signed
much
Fleury, right? Hayden
Hayden
Fleury. They
Fleury
re-signed
resigns.
him.
This pretty much the same Carolina team. They added
The only
Jesper Fast coming in
Okay.
to
The
kind of
only
replace.
question I have, is Mrazek the guy?
Yeah, I have the same question with them as goaltending. I have
Because
no other questions with this team. They have
agreed.
depth. They have talent up in their top six. They have an absolutely loaded defense. The question with them is goaltending. And
Is Mrazek the guy? Can he be the
Mrazek
one?
and Reimer, the kind of duo that can take you deep into the playoffs. Now, they did go to the Eastern Conference Final 2 years ago with Peter Mrazek in goal, and he got really hot in the postseason. But then they got swept by Boston in the conference finals, and things just kind of fell apart.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
completely trust Peter Mrazek and James
I don't
Reimer.
either. I don't either. That's the only question I have going forward. Look, they were 6th seed last year
Hmm.
in the playoffs, and they played relatively well. But you know, what do you say about this team? Look, I like the way they're moving. I like how they're going. They, I love the coach. I just have that same question about Mrazek. I really think that they're going to be. I think they can be an improved team this
Hmm.
year. Uh, because they didn't make a lot of moves. See, this is going to go back to those teams that didn't make a lot of moves
Hmm.
that are going to be bringing back most of the same core team. Where I think this team is going to be kind of hot out of the gates,
Yep.
and maybe kind of chill towards the end. But who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, I think they're absolutely a playoff team. I think their young players have another year of development, another year of growth and experience under their belt. I think they're just absolutely loaded up front and on the back end. They're certainly going to be a playoff team. My question just is how deep in the playoffs can you go with a Mrazek Reimer duo in goal? Um, and that's a question that we'll have to find out in these 2021 playoffs.
If they make it that far, you know what I mean. We
Yeah.
think they will, though. We think they
Oh,
will.
I definitely
Yeah, yeah,
think they'll be a playoff
yep,
team.
yep.
But that moves us on now to the Columbus Blue Jackets, who another team that has made some moves, opened up some cap space, but really hasn't done anything with that cap space so far. They still need to sign Pierre-Luc Dubois. He's obviously going to get a pretty solid contract given the way he looked last season, and particularly in the postseason. He was
Yeah,
phenomenal for Columbus
phenomenal.
in the
Yep,
playoffs.
yep.
This is a team going back to Mike Hoffman. I know we've talked about him because he's the top free agent still available. This is a team that I think could desperately use a guy like Mike Hoffman, and like Nashville, will be one of those top three teams in the running for Hoffman.
And I think with Tortorella and as coach there, and with that system there,
Hmm.
I think that's a better fit for Mike Hoffman than with Nashville.
Okay.
Okay, I just feel that to be a better fit there. I think that Tortorella will use Mike Hoffman a little bit more to his strengths per se than what uh,
Hines, John
Hines would
Hines.
do.
Yep.
Okay, so that's kind of how I feel about that as far as that's concerned. Um, to me, Columbus Blue Jackets is one of those teams where they always seem to be able to, even though they lost Panarin and all them guys the year before,
Bobrovsky and Duchesne.
Bobrovsky and Duchesne, and they lost all them guys, and it didn't matter.
Yep.
It just didn't matter. And
Yep.
they were still able to put uh, a, a playoff team out there. Now
Yep.
look, they only made it to the playoffs this year because of the expansion. They would not have made it in the playoffs last year, or on a normal circumstance. They were the ninth seed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the team above them was Toronto by 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they would not have made the playoffs normally. Okay, I don't. I think they might be another bubble team
I
again this
I
year.
think they're a bubble team.
Yeah,
We know they're going to be great defensively. They always have great defense. They've got Merzlikins and Korpisalo in goal, both who are very good young goaltenders. They just need offense, and that's why I brought up Mike Hoffman right out of the
no,
gate,
that's a great
because
point though.
that's if you add Mike Hoffman to this forward group, all of a sudden now I think they go from bubble team to playoff team.
I
Like, I'm
agree.
pretty solid playoff team. But
Yeah,
they
I would
need
have to
that
agree.
scoring, and they really don't have it. And injuries really kind of derailed this team last year. They had a
Yeah,
ton of injuries.
they lost
Um,
a
it-
lot of man games.
they did. So, they're a good team. I like them a lot. I think they're a really good team. I think because of the East being so tight and there being so many good teams in the Eastern Conference, I think they're going to be right on that playoff bubble. They might make it, they might not, but they're going to be a fun team to watch, and we know that they're going to be good defensively,
Yeah,
and
and we
and they're
know
going
the
to be,
Torch is going to have them prepared.
yes, they're going to be a hard-working team
Yep.
for sure, without a
Yeah, for
doubt.
sure. I tell you what, though, I was very surprised at how well they played against Tampa Bay in the playoffs.
Mhm.
The fact that they took Tampa Bay to the 7 games, they had that really long overtime game and everything. That just goes to show you that this team is well coached and
Mhm.
ready to play. Okay,
Yep.
they lacked a little bit of the talent,
Yep.
and it showed. But yeah, I agree with the East being so, or the Metropolitan being so close, and now with maybe the potential realignments,
Mhm.
who knows? Who knows what's going to happen with these guys?
Yep. All right.
So,
New
oh yeah,
Jersey. We head into the meat of the Metro Division here, the whole New York area, starting with New Jersey. And again, New Jersey, I don't want to spend a lot of time on them because they're a rebuilding team as well. They
right.
had
New
two.
coach though, Peter Laviolette
Peter
brought in.
are Lindy Ruff. Lindy
Or I'm
Ruff.
sorry, yeah, Lindy Ruff
Laviolette's
was
in
brought in.
Washington now. Lindy
Washington,
Ruff
yeah, sorry,
comes
my
in.
mistake.
Um, they're not going to be a playoff team this year. Their defense still has a lot of work to do. They did bring in Corey Crawford to go along with Mackenzie Blackwood in goal, which I like a lot. I think Crawford, much like Braden Holtby going to Vancouver,
Yeah,
Crawford's a
they needed help.
cup-winning veteran goaltender to go in there and help along a young goaltender in Mackenzie Blackwood, who I am a huge fan of.
Yeah,
I think Mackenzie Blackwood would be a top 10 goalie in the league if he had a better team in front of him. His
yeah.
individual numbers are always outstanding. So I think they're good in goal. They've got some solid pieces up front. I still think they need some more up front, which they did draft Alexander Holtz and Dawson Mercer in the draft of the
They
first
got
round.
major draft.
Yeah,
They got what, 3 or 4 first-round draft
they had
picks?
3 first-round draft picks. They drafted Alexander Holtz, Dawson Mercer, and Muka Medulin, the Russian defenseman. So I don't think any of those guys are going to play on the Devils this season. I think Holtz will stay in Sweden for the year. I think Mercer will play another year of junior, and Muka Medulin will stay in the KHL for at least one more season. But they have a good pipeline of young talent coming up. And similar to the other rebuilding teams like LA, like Ottawa, and like Detroit, they're just kind of waiting on these young
and, and,
guys to
and
make that next step.
yeah, yeah, and they're also sitting on a big giant pile of money.
Yeah, they've got a
They
ton of
have the
cap space as
largest of
well.
cap space of 17.1 million. So what are they waiting for? I mean,
I mean, they got to re-sign Blackwood still. He's an
yeah,
RFA, and they got to re-sign Jesper Bratt, who's an RFA, but still, they've got loads of cap space.
yeah,
Um,
that's a moot point when you
which,
have that much money as cap space.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
So, they didn't finish at the bottom of the league last year, but I think they're going to be close.
Yeah, they'll be near the bottom again this year, and they'll get another really good top 5 draft pick probably again.
Yep.
And
How about that? Look,
that's
I
how you
also think
build.
too. I also think too with Hughes and oh, what's that other kid? I can't think of his name right now.
He sure.
Heischer, yeah.
Yes.
Hughes and Heischer. Hughes not quite living up to expectations last year.
No, not at all.
Heischer,
He needs a big season.
yeah. Heischer,
Heischer's been good.
yeah.
Heischer I like. He's a really solid two-way player. I see
Right.
a lot of Patrice Bergeron's game in Nico Heischer. Obviously, Heischer's not at that level yet, but that's looking down the line.
21 years old,
That's
22
where I
years old.
see Heischer ending up as being a Patrice Bergeron type player.
Yeah, he was compared to that when he was drafted too, and I see
Hmm.
that too. I agree with you 100%. But they really need those guys to step up, and Hughes needs to play much better and play more into his contract than what he's playing right now. So,
Yes.
but I don't look to see New Jersey being much more than kind of where they're at right now.
I don't either. They still need some time to get that rebuild going there. New York Islanders. All about Matty Barzal now. They've had an active offseason. They obviously traded away Devon Taves in a cap dump move. Johnny
Yep.
Boychuk forced to retire, unfortunately, due to injury. They were
Sad, sad, sad.
very sad. They were able to re-sign Ryan Pulock. Now Matt Barzal is the final RFA that they need to get re-signed here. They do have the cap space to do it now. It's just about getting that deal
Getting it
done.
done.
And
Yep.
then seeing if they can bring some depth players back as well, who they lost. I think they might try and bring back Andy Green once the Barzal deal is done to try and
Yeah.
round out that defense. Islanders, solid team last year. I think we're surprisingly good in the playoffs. I don't think many people had them going to the conference finals.
No,
They were
definitely not.
surprisingly good in the playoffs. They seem to play really well together. They gel well as a team. And obviously, they're extremely well coached with Barry Trotz, who, for my money, I think is the best coach in the NHL right now. Um, so,
I'd
again,
second that. I'd second that.
I think Trotz is probably the guy at number one right now as far as coaching goes. Obviously,
Yeah.
there's some other guys certainly up there. Tortorella is up there. Vigneault is up there.
Yeah, and the guy from Dallas,
Rick Bowness had an
Bonus,
incredibly
Bonus,
good
yeah,
season taking over in Dallas.
that's what I mean.
And
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
I mean, Jared Bednar has done a phenomenal job with Colorado as well. There's a lot of great coaches. John Cooper. Yeah, I could. Coaches are a whole
yeah.
video unto
But
itself.
Trotz
Just
though,
there's something about Barry Trotz and the way he gets everything out of his team.
I compared the New York Islanders to the Philadelphia Flyers 1 year ahead.
Hmm.
I think the New York Islanders are 1 year ahead of where the Philadelphia Flyers want to be,
Hmm.
where they've had their young up and coming stars come in and start playing well and
Yep.
starting to make a difference on the team because Barry Trotz has been able to bring those guys in and this is his third year now, or
Hmm.
so he's had time to bring his draft picks are now starting to play for him now.
Yep.
Okay, and that's why I think you're seeing this team play so well. Okay, they utterly outplayed Philadelphia in the playoffs.
Yep.
That series, if you were a Philadelphia Flyers fan, was disgusting.
Yep.
It was not even worth turning on the TV to watch that mess. It really wasn't. They completely dominated Philadelphia. They completely outmuscled them. They beat them to the puck.
Hmm.
They outscored them. They out physicaled them. They did everything Philadelphia needs to be doing is what the Islanders are doing.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the Islanders are going to be a team to reckon with again this year, and they're
Oh, I'm
very
not
well
looking
built.
forward to playing them either.
They got to get that Barzal deal signed, and once they do that, they will be set for this coming season. So,
And I think that's going to happen too, because with
yeah,
Bertuzzi's eye injury and not being
Boychuk.
able, Boychuk's eye injury,
Yep.
not being able to do that, and then having that, they did have 3.9 million in cap space before that.
Now they
But
have
now
9.
that extra $6 million,
Yeah.
that just
Yeah,
oh,
the Barzal
okay.
deal isn't going to be a cap problem anymore. So that brings us to
Not
the
at
other
all.
New York team of the New York Rangers, one of the I think most talked about teams last season from last season through now is the
Yeah.
New York Rangers, and they're coming out of a rebuild and really starting to show signs of being an elite team, and they've so many great young pieces there. And on top of that, they get the #1 overall pick, and Alexi Lafreniere is now a New York Ranger, which is
Uh,
absolutely incredible. Incredibly young, incredibly talented. They were able to bring back the players that they needed to bring back, like Tony DeAngelo and
yeah,
Ryan Strome. They've
yeah.
got one of the best young goaltenders in the league in Igor Shesterkin, looking to be
Just
their
Sturkin.
starter.
Yep,
Alex Georgiev will be the backup.
yep.
Lundqvist no longer there. This team,
See you, King. He
this
went
team.
away.
Oh yeah, you're just looking for this Rangers team now, who are a bubble playoff team, probably slightly on the outside looking in. You are looking them to just rocket up the standings now this year and really show that they're on the same trajectory of the Colorado Avalanche, just maybe a year or two behind.
I would have to agree with you on that for sure. Especially with Shosturkin back there as the
Mm-hmm.
goalie. That kid, oh my gosh,
He
that
looks
guy
so
plays.
good.
Wow. Like I would put him on the same level as like say Carter Hart.
Mm-hmm. He's
Okay.
certainly he's certainly headed that way, and I think we're finally going to get to see him for a full season this year,
Yeah.
or maybe not a full season, but
Well,
fully
56 games or
at the
however many we're gonna
NHL
play.
level. We're going to see him for a full year at the NHL level, and I
Yeah.
think by the end of this season, you could be talking about him in the same level as Carter Hart.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree. Look, I'm not looking forward to playing New York.
No.
They're going to be a tough team to play. They play really well in the transition game.
Mm-hmm.
They've got good defense. They will stuff you in the neutral zone, especially with their goalie. This is going to be a tough team to play, and I do see them being a playoff team this year. They were on the outside. Last year they were the 11th seed. So
They got in on
tech,
expanded playoffs,
right,
but they would not have made
correct.
the normal playoffs.
But I think that's going to be a different case this coming year.
I agree. I think the Rangers are a playoff team this year, and we
Yeah,
really start to see them on that upwards trajectory and showing
yeah.
the team that they're
Start to
going to
take
be.
over games more and
Yep.
start to win more of those games that they're supposed to win. You know what I mean? I think we're going to start seeing more of that this year, and maybe even next year we might, because I think next year Lafreniere is going to be playing next year
Oh
for
yeah,
the Rangers.
yeah.
Okay,
He's going to be
I
in the
just think
Rangers
so.
lineup as soon as this season starts. Number
You
one
think so?
overall pick. Oh yeah, #1 overall pick immediately enters the lineup. He'll be playing for the Rangers. Absolutely.
Okay, all right, okay. I even still, I wouldn't want to play against him either.
No, I think he's gonna be your rookie of the year in 20 for this season. Will be
Wow,
Alexi
there you heard it
Lafreniere.
here first, folks.
He
You heard
he
it
will
here
be your
first.
Calder Trophy winner. Lafreniere going into the league this year will be a lot like
Wow.
when guys like McDavid and Eichel and Matthews
Okay.
and Line and those guys entered the league. He's going to have an immediate impact in his first
Okay.
season.
Okay. Cool. I like it. I like it. I'm going to be interested to see how that's going to work out. All right. I promise I won't be.
It's time for your team,
Yeah, man.
the
I promise I won't be.
Philadelphia Flyers, who
Woo! Go ahead.
Matt Niskanen retires. Kind of a
Yep.
shock to pretty much everybody. Didn't see that coming. He still had a year left on his contract and wasn't, he was in his 30s, but he wasn't old. They bring in Eric Gustafsson, which certainly doesn't replace Niskanen, but it was an offensive-minded defenseman to try and bring in some points here. Um, they were a great team last year. Philly was a great team last year. Carter Hart showed another level to his game. He took another step in his development. Brian Elliott was a very good veteran backup for Carter Hart last season, and they brought him back for another year. Um, it's largely the same core group coming back for Philadelphia. I see no reason to think that they're going to be any different than they were last season. I think you're looking at one of the better teams in the East and a team that's looking to make a deep playoff run.
Gosh, man. I don't think I can improve on that. I'm going to say this. Yeah, Niskanen was a surprise that he retired. And Gustafson was not a replacement. And I'm actually scratching my head on that one, Chuck. Why did you sign him? We already have Gostisbehere on the team, who's an offensive-minded defenseman. Why did you bring another guy in who plays the same type of game? We did re-sign Philip Myers. That just happened here the other day.
Yep.
We were that right there. That I think, although not a replacement for Niskanen, but that does give us that right-handed shot defenseman
Mm-hmm.
to replace the position of Niskanen.
Yes, I think
Okay.
Myers will play with Provorov most likely.
Oh, that's definitely going to be the top pairing. I would have to say on that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for Carter Hart to have a Vezina Trophy year this year.
I
Uh,
agree. I think he's getting to that level. His development reminds me a lot of Andrei Vasilevsky in Tampa
yeah,
Bay, where he
yeah,
came in and he was really good right away, but then he quickly propelled himself to not just being really good, but being one of the top goaltenders in the league. And I think Carter Hart is going to be one of the top goaltenders in the league very, very soon, and hopefully at that Vezina level.
yeah, yeah. Look, Philadelphia was strapped cap wise, but then when Niskanen retired, it like suddenly opened up the floodgates, and we're like, oh, hey, we have all
Hmm.
this money now.
Yeah.
Uh, with re-signing Myers, um, and then bringing in Gustafson, our cap space is down to like 1 million now.
Hmm.
Um, I was not happy with the signing of Gustafson. We did let Thompson walk. We did let Grant
Grant
walk,
walk.
but we let Tyler Pitlick walk. And that is a huge loss because all we did was re-sign Braun.
Hmm.
What? I
Well,
don't get it.
they're
Anyway,
they're going to be banking on Joel Farabee, I think, to play a third line role on a consistent basis.
here's what I think is going to really need to happen. We're counting on Nolan Patrick to come back
They
and
also
play.
do need Nolan Patrick back, absolutely.
Okay. Nolan Patrick comes back to play. That's the difference maker right there.
Hmm.
We're done. We don't even have to have any more conversation.
Yep.
I look for Philadelphia to be an improved team. I don't know if we're going to move up in the standings, but I look for us to be an improved team because the layoff hurt us.
Hmm.
We went into the break winning 9 out of the last 10 games, and then we were off for 147 days,
Yep.
and then we come back into the round robin and then play the first 2 rounds and lose to the Islanders in the second round.
Yep.
It was a lackluster performance. We were outplayed in both series. I don't get it. I think the break really hurt Philadelphia, and they could have gone further. I look for them to be an improved team, maybe not necessarily in the standings, but I look for them to be an improved team, and I look for Carter Hart to be knocking on the Vezina Trophy door.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely think Philly's going to be near the top of the East again, and definitely expecting big things from Carter Hart. Philly finally has a franchise goalie that they've been waiting for so long. They finally
Oh
finally
my God!
have a franchise goalie. But
Finally.
that brings us now to the cross-state bitter rival Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, this is a team that kind of an interesting offseason. They made some depth moves. They let some guys go. They traded away Patrick Hornquist. They brought in guys like Cody Ceci and let Jack Johnson go on the back end, which is
Yeah,
kind of a wash in my opinion. They
yeah,
brought in
but they
Mike
did bring in
Matheson.
Kapanen. They did bring in
They did
Kapanen,
make the
though.
trade for Kasperi Kapanen to add some speed to that lineup. Again, I think they gave up way too much for him.
Agreed. Yeah,
Uh,
they let
Pittsburgh
Murray
in
go too.
Pittsburgh, in my opinion, their window is closed. They're not a Stanley Cup team. And they are a declining team that sooner rather than later is going to be completely out of the playoffs, and I think might not even make the playoffs this year.
I think that's going to be sooner rather than later because look, Sydney is getting old. Malkin's getting old. Their
Yep.
defense has got full of holes. They're
Hmm.
counting way too much on their stars, and they haven't replaced that offense at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The,
They've got an issue at goalie where they got Yari back there, but Murray went.
Murray's gone. Tristan Jarry's a starter now, and
That's
we've
what I
never
mean.
seen him be a full-time starter before,
No,
so that's a question mark. Um, the,
I think the coach is going to be on the hot seat this year.
Yep. They fired all of the assistants, but
I know.
not the head coach. That means if this team starts the season 3-7 in their first 10 games,
The
Sullivan's
head
gone.
coach. Yep.
Sullivan's gone.
Yep. I agree.
But I don't necessarily think it's Mike Sullivan's fault. I think this is the classic case of a team being a contending team for 15 years and being one of the best teams in the league, winning Stanley Cups. You don't get to replenish that prospect pool when you're picking, 29th, 30th in the draft every year, or
Exactly.
sometimes not even having first round draft picks or second round draft picks, is you trade them to bring in new players.
Yeah.
And that's what happens when you're a contending team for so long, is eventually you run out of that young talent, your core gets older, and it's rebuild time. And I
That's
think
right.
that's what you're seeing coming here quickly with Pittsburgh. Listen,
Yeah.
any team that has Crosby and Malkin down the middle, Letang still performing on the back end as a pretty good defenseman, Dumoulin's been solid, and I
Yep.
really like John Marino. I think he's a really good young defenseman they have. This team might be good enough to hang around for another year or two, but I think the decline is going to be noticeable, and it's not going to be long before this team's out of the playoffs and probably looking to rebuild.
I think you said it perfectly. I think you said hanging around.
Yes.
Okay. And look, Crosby hasn't played a full season in what,
Oh,
3, 4 years?
it's been a while, and
And
Malkin's had
Malkin
injury
hasn't
issues
played a
as
full
well.
season in a couple of years either.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I definitely see this team on the decline sooner rather than later. I
Mm-hmm.
do not see this team making the playoffs this year
I,
because
I,
of that reason,
yeah, I think they could really drop out this year, especially with how tough the division is. Um,
especially with like Columbus coming up,
mm-hmm.
especially with like uh the Islanders and now maybe the Rangers
Well, and I'm interested to see what
and
division
Carolina.
Pittsburgh ends up in.
Yeah.
Who are they going to be playing against? Are they going to be playing with those central-ish teams like Chicago and Detroit? They'll probably finish ahead of teams like that. Or are they going to be in the more East Division with like the New York teams and Philadelphia? It's going to be interesting. If they end up in that division with teams like Boston and the Rangers, Islanders, Buffalo, um, New Jersey, they'll
I'm going to
probably
make a
finish
prediction
ahead. But
right now. I'm going to make a prediction right now. You ready? If they realign the league, I guarantee you that Pittsburgh will be in a spot where they will be set up for success.
well, they might be better off moving them to the Central then, but then they'd have to play teams like Colorado and St. Louis, Dallas, who are all certainly better than the Penguins at this point.
Okay, but then look at who else they're going to be in that potential division.
I'm trying to think.
Well, you
Probably you
said
would have
Detroit,
Chicago and Detroit
Chicago.
would be in that division. Minnesota. They'd probably finish ahead of Minnesota. So you're right. They could squeak out a playoff spot if they play in that division. Nashville also would probably be in that division, though.
Exactly.
I don't know. I'm interested to see what the divisional alignments are going to look like, because
Me
that
too.
is going to play a big role in which teams are playoff level and which teams aren't.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And speaking of which teams are playoff levels and which teams aren't, how about the Washington Capitals to round out the Metropolitan Division and the Eastern Conference? I'll tell you what, I'm not looking for anything major to happen with the Capitals other than the fact that they were able to bring in Laviolette
As their coach, yes.
as their coach
Certainly a huge upgrade over Todd Reardon.
all day.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't
They
stand
let Todd
Reardon.
Reardon hang out to dry.
Yep.
They did not help him. They did not give him a decent opportunity to try and coach the team, and they handcuffed him. And all of this because they didn't sign Barry Trotz. If they would have just re-signed Barry Trotz, I don't understand why they let that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with Washington, they obviously should have brought back Trotz after that Stanley Cup win. Reardon, in my opinion, has no business being a head coach. He might be a fine assistant, but I don't think he's a head coach. And he was an absolute disaster for the Capitals. This offseason, they've added some depth. They've brought in Trevor Van Riemsdyk to that D-core.
That'll help.
They round out some of that defense right there.
Segenthaler they brought in, or they re-signed Segenthaler.
Re-signed. They also brought in Paul Ledoux, kind of another depth guy. But they didn't really add.
Holtby.
They lost Holtby in goal. They brought in Lundqvist kind of as a one-year fix for the Caps. What I really don't, they've got an aging core. To me, Washington is in the same situation kind of as Pittsburgh, but not as far along.
I
They
agree.
are in a similar position as Pittsburgh, where they're going to be declining. Their core is getting older. Oshie's 33, Backstrom's 33, Ovechkin's 35, Carlson's 30. They're getting older. Their core is older, but they're not quite as declined as the Penguins are at this point.
Agreed.
So they're gonna be, I think, a playoff team. I don't think they're gonna win the division again, no matter what division they're in. I think
Yeah.
they're gonna be more of like a third, fourth place type team, and you're
Yeah.
gonna start to see them step back a little bit, but they're not gonna step completely out of contention yet.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm
they're
with you on
they're
that.
they're similar to Pittsburgh, but not quite as far along in the decline. But it's coming for the Capitals, and
I,
eventually this core is gonna age out.
agreed. But I think one of the things that's really been helping the Capitals that we don't get to see that decline is Ovechkin.
Because he hasn't
Where
declined at all.
no. And see, we know that Sidney Crosby has declined. We know that
Mm-hmm.
Malkin has declined. Okay, but Ovechkin hasn't.
Yep.
And I think that's masking
Mm-hmm.
some of the because look, they went and he got the record this past season. But how long did it take for him to finally get that final one? Like they played like 17 games or something, or 10 games or something crazy like that for him to finally get that
Get
one goal.
700. Yep.
I that just goes to show you that it's all about him.
Yeah, they were pushing to get him that goal, and he went like 4 or 5 games without for finally getting it.
That's what I mean.
He still puts up 40 to 50 goals every year. Ovechkin hasn't really declined, and that's, I think, Backstrom still plays at an extremely high level. Oshie's still scoring. Kuznetsov's younger, which I think helps that out a lot. Um, so the decline hasn't been as evident with the Capitals as it has been with Pittsburgh, and I think that's why, you're gonna see the Capitals hang around a little bit longer than you see this Penguins core team.
Yep.
But I think they're headed for the same destination, and that's just the core players getting older, not having enough young guys to replace them, and needing to eventually rebuild. But for this season, I think the Capitals are definitely going to be a playoff team still. I think they're going to slip a little bit. They're not going to be a first place team, but they should still be in the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think so too. I think they're going to probably be like that seventh or eighth seed. I don't think they're going to win the division, no matter what division they're in,
Mm-hmm.
as well. And I also look for them to be taking a step back as well
Mm-hmm.
this year. They're still going to be in the playoffs, but they're not going to be nearly as in contention as what they've been the last 2 years, especially after their cup win.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah. Well, it's been a slice. I don't think Washington's going to be what they were, and I agree. They're going to be in the decline as well, too. So,
All right, so that is all 31 teams looking at their off seasons and where they're headed next year. And that is going to do it for episode 1 of the Off the Wall Hockey Show. So, really appreciate everyone who's watched and is watching. Steele, great to have you on, obviously, and great to get the show off the ground as well.
yes,
It's
finally.
great to finally get a full episode recorded and ready to go here. And
Exactly.
hopefully we're inching closer to a new hockey season as well.
For sure. I'm looking forward to many more of these with you, John. This was amazing. And I can't wait to see what we can bring to the folks. I can't wait to see some of the segments that we have coming up. And I can't wait to see some of the cool things that we're going to be talking about here in the future. So I'm with you on that, my man. This was exciting. I can't wait for the next one to go. Yeah, man. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. Really, really happy to do this, and really happy to get this thing started here and get an episode off the ground. So for those of you watching, please be on the lookout for future episodes of the Off the Wall Hockey Show. When we fully get this thing ramped up, this is going to be a weekly live show that we're going to have going for you, and it's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of segments covering the entire NHL on a weekly basis. And it's going to be available on all sorts of different platforms in video and in podcast form as well. So I'm really, really excited for that. But it's been great to get a show done. Episode 1 is off the ground. I want to thank everyone for watching. Remember to please subscribe to all of us here on YouTube. And be on the lookout. Check out steelflyers.com as well. That is where you can find everything Steel Flyers, all the shows, all the different personalities putting out content who are part of the Steel Flyers network. It's all available there, so definitely check out steelflyers.com. And we're going to have a lot more of these coming your way. And with that, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you guys so much, and hopefully talk to you soon.